You appreciate earning your listening ears tonight as we got another beautiful night with Varla Ventura. I'm using the hard A's tonight, and we love it when she's here. Her gorgeous smile, her infectious wisdom of everything weird, strange, and woo. Before we bring in Varla, I'm just teasing because I could see her laughing there. I could see her. She just almost shut the hell up, Dave, and all this, but it's all good. Cloudy with a chance of UFOs taking home the gold medal tonight. Gorgeous Julie K with the silver. Jay Foxhunter with a nice bronze medal to add to his collection. Spoken Joe and SJ, good to see you guys. Oracles, Todd Purdon, Black Dragon, good to have you all here. Ed Clater is here, everyone. Gorgeous Steph Dickey and Todd Purdon are here. All right, Adrian Belezzo is here, man. Let's give him a round of applause. Race fan, Sonny Sloan. The Ronald Pinton is here, everyone. The Ronald Pinton. Yes, Nicola, good to see you. Gorgeous Jenny Metz, Jeffrey DeRuin, and lovely Aussie Ange has returned. Mennonite Abe, good to see you. Adam Lakatos. Gorgeous Cosmic Floor, ufologist is here. He'll be signing autographs after the show. Light up to the left of the studio, if you don't mind. To the left of the studio. Jurassic Joey, Media Fox, thanks for coming on in. Andrew, good to see you, my friend. Thank you for joining us. Kimberly Jackshaw, been a while. How you doing, sweetie? Nice to have you here. As we scroll on down, John Jackson, nice to have you with us. Tracy Benna, looking lovely tonight. There she is, everyone. Give us a wave, Tracy, if you don't mind. And there's Dirt Road right there, Dirt Road. And Mama Susan is here. And we scroll on down. Sweet Donna C. has arrived. Stephen Edmond, the gorgeous Laura Stevens is here. And so is sweet Patty B. Patty B will be signing autographs after the show as well. Do not make eye contact. She doesn't like that. Okay, line up to the left of the studio. Left of the studio. All right, moving on here. Snakes on a UFO, good to see you. Christopher Morales, thanks for coming on in. And Mondak, Jeremy Jones, Tewaz, good to see you all. Thank you for joining us. Gorgeous Amy C. Get out. Varla is here. Longtime fan. Hi, all. Black Dragon, thank you so much for kicking off that super chat tonight, man. Always appreciate your support of Spaced Out Radio. Thank you so much. And, we love you, man. Double Tim, Dirty Filth, Moonlick Kevin, how are you? Richard Elmore, Guillermo, and hi, Sandra. Hi, Sandra. Hi, Sandra. Always a mouthful. JR, good to have you here, buddy. And moving on down. Oh, okay, we got all them. There's gorgeous Amy O right there. She is the pride of the Las Vegas Strip. Gorgeous Amy O. Yep. Mm-hmm. And we continue on. Jello, good to see you. And let's see. I said hi to all you guys. Project Blue Book, good to see you. Vanner Smith. Dry Toast, the best name on YouTube right there. Vincent Proto, how you doing, buddy? Good to see you. Jose, how are you, man? 509er, nice to have you here. The gorgeous and talented Kara McIver. There she is. She's in Saskatchewan where it's all flat. Everybody could, Kara, could you just wave to everybody so everybody could see you in North America? We'd appreciate that. We really would. Oh, God. Hold on one second here. This is an issue. Hold on. Oh, friggin' frig. Okay, I got 1 minute here. Yeah, 30 seconds. Whew, almost didn't get the radio show on there. That was close. Yeah. All right. Hi to everyone else. I'm not going to make it here. Not going to make it. Thank you, Open-Minded Clarity, for that awesome super chat. Super chat is a great way to support what we do on a nightly basis. Let's rock and roll with Varla right now. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. We got a great show for you tonight. As returning for our monthly feature called Our Cryptid World, we have the lovely and talented Varla Ventura as she returns to talk about some of the weirdest and strangest cryptid creatures that are roaming around North America and around the world. All of Varla's books can be found at any major bookstore across the United States and Canada, and we really appreciate her attendance on this show each and every month because she is a crowd favorite. So make sure you check it on out. Her website is varlaventura.net. Varla, how are you again, my friend?
Hello, I'm great. How are you?
Well, I'm very good. I mean, I had an exciting incursion right before the show, and you know what scares me now, okay? And I'll fill this in a minute. But about an hour before I decided to get ready for the show, I decided, well, old Davey's going to go to Tim Hortons. He's going to grab himself a nice lemonade because I like their frozen lemonades. And I've been working around the house all day because I had the day off. And I've been working around the house, tidying up the studio and trying to get some things fixed up. And I figure I'm going to go for a drive. And I pull out of my driveway and, just down my street, and I live in a very small street, and I pass my neighbor's yard on the corner of the main street I got to turn onto, and there is a giant black bear.
My God.
Sitting in the yard and decides to lay down. And I'm like, this is awesome. So I pull around the corner. Instead of turning left to go to Tim Hortons, I pull right, and, there's zero traffic in my area, zero. And I just rolled down the window and I started filming him. I filmed him for about seven minutes. It's all on my Facebook page. But this guy was masterful, beautiful. Like this bear knows he is handsome. So he climbs my neighbor's apple tree and starts picking up. And I saw something I've never seen before. The bear stands up on two legs in the apple tree while he's reaching up, grabbing apples and shoving it into his mouth. It was the most awesome thing. So now I'm a little freaked out because the studio gets really warm and the studio is on ground level. I've got the window open.
Oh,
there's no screen. So I'm waiting for my Canadian flag that I have covering my window to all of a sudden start moving and a black bear head to come in. That's what I'm waiting for right now.
Oh, it could happen in the middle of the show. It could happen.
I would love to see it.
That would be amazing. You'd have to turn your cam so before you, or maybe you just start screaming. I don't know. If Dave starts screaming,
you'll hear. You'll hear me for sure. It is always lovely to have you here, my friend. And enough about me, and we're going to learn about you because we always have new listeners coming in each and every month. You are someone who grew up in a really weird household. I say that complimentary. Yes. And it has turned you into just a beautifully weird person who writes about some of the strangest occurrences that are out there. Why do you love this field so much?
Actually, I was reminded of why I love it so much. Just the other day, my son we went for a walk and we went by one of those little free libraries, and he's like 10 now. Well, he's not like 10. He is 10. I'm his mom. I know his age. And he pulls out this book and it's like, I'm not really paying that much attention. There's like several books in there. And we get home, and then that afternoon he starts reading this book, and he comes up to me and he says, "Oh, Mom, you're going to love this book. You're going to love it. I really want you to read it." And it's a Ripley's Believe It or Not, like scary stories. And it's basically the exact kind of book that inspired me when I was that age to get interested in, I mean, that kind of thing was always around me. As you said, I grew up in a bit of a weird household. But one of my first books, The Book of the Bizarre, was basically just like a Ripley's Believe It or Not meets like My Paranormal World. And it was just such a great thing to have him reading this book and saying, you're going to love this. And it's like, I do love that. And that was kind of, I was a kid that grew up really kind of loving the ghost stories, the Ripley's Believe It or Not. I read a lot of inappropriate horror at a young age and a lot of real scary fairy tales. Those were a lot of our bedtime stories, were some of those original, not just the Grimm's fairy tales, but also the Andersen fairy tales are quite terrifying. So I think that sort of backdrop of the influence of sort of the strange combined with what I got out of reading was really what drove me down the path, not just to love the weird, but to really want to write about it and pursue it as something, beyond just a hobby.
Was writing always a passion?
Yes. I was that kid that, they would put you outside and have you do expository writing, and they'd say, okay, write down all your senses. And I was the kid that wouldn't stop writing to go play on the playground after that, because they'd put us outside and we'd do the writing, and then you got to go to recess. And I would just sit there writing and writing and writing and writing. And that's like definitely my happy place. It's the place that I feel the most comfortable. Certainly not always easy, and it's a place of struggle. And there's a lot of emotions attached to it. You feel very vulnerable when you write something. You feel vulnerable when you share it with people. Doesn't matter how steel tight your ego is. When you get a bad review, it gets you, so there's like, I don't know if I could go back in time if I would say, hey, it'd be really great as if you should be a writer. I might have said like, go to college or something, but here
but
I
it
am.
makes you happy.
So, yeah, makes me happy now. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, by no means are and I don't say this to be wrong or anything, but by no means are you making a lifestyle so rich and famous life off of your writing. But at least you have the ability to do what you love to do, which is what so many of us do not get that desire to do.
It's true. We don't all get that chance, and we don't all get that. And it's not like, I worked a lot of crappy and not so crappy day jobs while writing for years and years. So I know it can feel really disheartening to want something to be your full-time passion and just also have bills to pay and, mouths to feed and all of that kind of stuff. So I totally relate to that. And I'm kind of finally to that place now. I've got several books, like each one I can scrape just a little bit off of. Very little. But yeah, always trying new things and, trying to hawk hats or whatever. Got to do it.
I hear you. I run a radio show. Run a radio show, which means, we're really poor. We're really poor. As I tell all the journalists, back in the day when, I was working at the radio station, I would have a lot of kids come up, kids being like high schoolers or just about to enter college. Yeah. Everybody tells me I got a great voice and that I should go into radio. And I said, well, how much do you think you're going to make? I don't know, $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 coming out of college. I said my first job was for less than $20,000 a year.
It's part-time is what it's really, it's part-time. So you do it at two places, or every author I know has multiple things, like I do, and I still do a lot of editing and, kind of whatever, various copywriting and things like that for people when I need to. So yeah, it's definitely, it takes a lot.
Absolutely. So for you, the monsters that we're getting into, we haven't talked about the fairy realm in a long time here.
We haven't.
Why is that? What's with the fairy realm that people just kind of get all heebie-jeebied over?
Well, it's scary. It's actually very scary. I think that there's this idea that a lot of people, when they think of fairies, they think of something very kind of ethereal and winged and lovely. But the fairy kingdom has a lot of very terrifying creatures and a lot of pretty life-threatening lessons. And certainly in Celtic mythology, the fairy kingdom and the underworld and the afterlife were interchanged, which is why we have such a strong tradition around Halloween, Samhain, which is a Celtic holiday, which is really about kind of unleashing a lot of those beasties from the fairy kingdom. The fairies and witches are closely connected. They can work together. Fairies have a lot of mischief. They have a lot of magic. They have a lot of trickery. And the folkloric record is rich with pretty freaky, corpsey, strange things on the road at night. And I know that for myself, always being a lover of the paranormal and just collecting and listening to shows like this and hearing people's UFO stories and stories of hauntings, it was remarkable to me as I was delving into some of the older folk tales, in particular from Wales and Ireland, that there were so many descriptions of things that sounded very much like an abduction. I mean, they were abductions, or like a poltergeist, something in the house that's sort of causing mayhem and stealing things and scratching you. That could be a poltergeist, could be a hobgoblin. You could have, an infestation of slightly unfriendly or dissatisfied house fairies in your midst. So I think I'm particularly interested in it. I mentioned before that I heard these stories when I was a young kid, and even one of the first stories that I remember really well was my mom reading me The Little Mermaid, the Hans Christian Andersen. And that's a fairy story, and not a fairy tale in the sense of, girl meets prince and they live happily ever after, but in the crossing over into this other realm, this parallel dimension, this kind of other threshold. And in that story in particular, her sacrifice is that when she walks on the beach, her feet bleed. It's like daggers are stabbing in her feet. And so that always really haunted me. I wrote I was researching fairies, and I ended up writing a whole book about mermaids, because that is in the kingdom of the fairy, the Murrow are considered fairy creatures, and there's just so much about them. It was worth a whole book and then some.
Very cool. Very cool. Varla Ventura is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Take us back in time to where the legends of the fairy folk come from.
So you actually have legends from around the world, anywhere where you have, indigenous cultures telling tales around the campfire. You have stories of fairies, of elementals, of something that protects the water, something that's in the woods. So that's kind of cross-culturally and around the world. But my particular area of interest and speciality, and I've spent some time traveling in the British Isles and Ireland in particular, and somewhat in Scotland, is the Celtic mythology, where you do have a lot of what we perhaps think of in kind of modern Western culture. Our idea of fairies and fairy tales do come from a lot of those Celtic myths. And then, of course, you had people. So a lot of what we have in the written record today comes from the Victorian era, actually. So it's like the Victorian era. There were people who were traveling around, realizing that cultures were really kind of being lost, and stories were not being told again and again, generation after generation. So that oral tradition was starting to fall away. And so there was a trend of people who were well learned, and they were traveling around and they were recording some of these stories. And so a lot of what we have is colored through that lens. And so it's important to kind of keep that in mind when you're reading these stories, because I think that by and large, the people who were gathering these stories were educated, but they were often men of the cloth. So they had a certain agenda, shall we say, when they're writing stories. I mean, the devil comes into play here much more in a lot of these stories that were written in the early 1800s through the Victorian, through the 1900s, during that century when people were traveling and writing stories. But you also had like consulate generals, you had scholars and poets who were native to that country and wanted to collect the stories. William Butler Yeats, for example, is credited with having recorded, hundreds of amazing fairy tales. The belief of the people. You had the Grimm brothers were kind of doing that in Europe and Germany, Eastern Europe. So just kind of that era was a lot of recording and translating into English, that upon which our kind of more modern, everyday Western idea of fairies has been built or has been kind of filtered through.
Why do the fairies get such a rambunctious type of rapport with people?
Because they're rambunctious. I mean, they're dastardly. They're tricky.
But why though? Why are they going down that road? Just out of curiosity.
So, I mean, that's a matter of probably personal opinion. You could ask a lot of people, but my personal opinion is that there's lessons, and they're not always like moral lessons, like, oh, you were supposed to do this, but you didn't do this. I think they often are there to kind of set us on the path that we need to be on. So, for example, the Puka is one of my personal favorites. The Puka is a trickster fairy. You might hear that term if you were traveling in rural Ireland. You might hear the term Puka being applied to any kind of fairy creature. But to be more specific, it's usually a shapeshifter, and it can transform into a horse or into a rabbit. There's a lot of modern movies and stuff that reference the Puka, but the Pukas are great because they really freak you out. They don't actually cause harm, although they can cause a little bit of madness. But essentially, imagine you're walking home one night, or you're driving to Tim Hortons, and all of a sudden you see this thing in the road, or something's following you, or there's a horse with glowing red eyes that comes up behind you and basically like forces you onto its back and takes you for this insane midnight ride where you can't see anything and your life is flashing before your eyes. And what you did is you were going home a little late. You were taking the wrong path. And so the Puka was there to basically, scare you to the point of changing your ways. And again and again, you see the Puka in particular playing tricks on drunks. One of the best examples of that is the movie Harvey with James Stewart. Plays this like town drunk who's always embarrassing his sister. He plays Elwood P. Dowd, and he sees this giant white rabbit all the time. And this rabbit is like always talking to him, and he's talking to it. And everyone just thinks he's crazy because there's all these scenes where he's just talking to this, nothing, a blank bar stool next to him. And that's kind of, the Puka likes to mess around with people who seem a little less credible. So people don't always believe them at first, and then they just go down that road themselves. So, I mean, there's a lot of reasons, I think, for sort of paranormal, supernatural experiences. Some people might think they're just completely random, but I think with the other thing with the fairies is like, don't go into the woods, don't tread on that fairy mound. Like there's some warning barrier stories there of, trespassing. Going a little too far into getting a little too close.
Joe is asking a question right off the bat here. Normally I don't take questions until hour 2, but he's saying, how come no one's ever captured a fairy? Do those people all end up dead?
Actually, there's lots of stories of people capturing fairies, and the fairies pretty much always talk their way out of it. So there's some, modern like parodies of like Lady Coddington's Pressed Fairy book, which was this book about these little girls who were fairies were coming down and they were smashing them in a book. And I don't know if you've ever seen that book. It's pretty fabulous. They're like smashed on the pages, and it's pretty funny. It looks like a Victorian photo album. But there's lots of stories in particular with like leprechauns, of people capturing them and then the leprechaun being more clever and talking their way out of it. But I also think that's not always the goal, is to capture a fairy. I mean, I think we have this instinct of like, oh, if I saw one, I would capture it so everyone would believe me. But, you can't really, we try that with ghosts too, right? Like we try and we capture EVPs and we capture like little snippets and we can like retell stories, but we don't always have like an envelope full of evidence we can present. It's up to you whether or not you're going to actually believe that, right? So, I mean, I think we're amongst the believing crowd tonight. Yeah, we're believers. So I do think
which reminds me, I should tell people, because episode 2 of Dave 101 happens tonight when you and I are done, and it is going to be on why do we always rip into the experiencers.
Oh,
yes,
yeah, I experienced that a lot when trying to find people to talk to me about mermaids, because I'll tell you what, like you got people who, practice witchcraft and, dance naked in the moonlight, or, believe in UFOs or have been abducted or have seen Bigfoot, and they don't want to talk about mermaids. It's like, that's going too far. It's like, come on now.
I know.
Who's drawing the line in the sand, right?
Right. No, but it's ridiculous, that, I mean, for the past couple of years, as a UFO thing, story has really taken off, and even with a lot of the Bigfoot and cryptid sightings, I mean, we just hear people getting ripped left, right, and center. We want these stories. We want to be able to investigate them. And yes, eyewitness testimony is anecdotal. But I mean, these people just continue to absolutely rip apart anyone who has had an experience or multiple experiences. And why are you paying attention then? Why are you paying attention? Just doesn't make sense to me. It's personal to me.
I totally agree. And I find that, I get a lot of questions, and I'm perfectly happy to explain my point of view. But, they're just, you got your armchair doctors and your armchair critics, you're like the Facebook degree of medicine, who are out there making the comments where in the safety where we can't see their real faces, right?
Right. Well, let's hold that thought.
Let's hold that back.
Hold that thought. Experiencers, the unknown, fairies, the fae. We're getting into it all. VarlaVentura.net is her website. We'll be back with the lovely and talented Varla Ventura and Our Cryptid World coming up next. All right, we're clear.
Okay.
Yep.
Mermaids.
Pikachu, how are you? Magnus, good to see you. And yes, you can be Lady Chad Smith, Celine. Absolutely, you can. It's good times when Varla Ventura is here.
That's a great. I'm really excited about what you said, because, yeah, there's things to say about that. The ripping apart of the experiencers.
Mm-hmm. Jeremy identifies as Chad Smith. That's nice. Big Dog, how you doing, buddy? Long time, no time. Hi, Nikki. Thank you for the compliment on my bear. Do you want to see my bear video?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on 1 second.
I do. Because, I can't go to Facebook while I'm on this thing, because it risks everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, give me 2 seconds here.
I can't believe I didn't turn off my ringer, or I'm doing that right now. Thank God nothing happened. That would have been so embarrassing.
One second. Yeah, it happens every now
I
and then.
know, but it's unprofessional.
It is. It totally is. All right. Let me just enlarge the screen here. And then we'll share this. And there we go. And we'll add this to the stream. We'll make it large here. So he's coming up here. And so this is I'm about 45 feet away from it here. Where is he? Hold on. Hurry up, Dave. God damn, you're slow. There he is.
Oh, that's so. Oh, he's in the apple tree.
Yeah. I had to make sure my vehicle was in park.
Oh man, that bear is stoked right now.
Oh yeah.
There's so many apples on there.
Oh yeah. He is one happy bear right now. And I'm just going to skip forward here because once he gets over a little bit, you're going to, there he is right there.
Oh.
Hey, Big Dog, thank you so much for that awesome super chat, man. Thank you. Really appreciate that. Yeah, so this guy, see these trees right here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's another house. Okay, right behind that tree, you'll see the trees behind it. That's my yard.
Oh, he could come. Did you put a pie on your windowsill?
No, I haven't put a pie on my windowsill, but yeah, there he is, just enjoying the time, grabbing some apples. And
now, did you talk to that neighbor?
Yeah. So those trees there, that's my yard.
Wow.
Okay, that's how close he is. And that's not my house there. That's not my house. There he is, turning right there. Oh, hey, buddy, how are you? He's like,
the people whose house that is with the apple tree, did they know there was a bear in there?
It's empty. The house is sold, waiting for the new tenants.
Oh, well, it's going to come with a bear.
416 Bitcoin, good to see you. Lynn Monet, how are you, my friend? Did you get an email back yet from our booking team? Please let me know. Hi, gorgeous Ronnie Lindsay over in the Spreaker chat room. Yeah, so I watched this guy. This is when I was going to Tim Hortons here. The stunning Stacy Tillman mask has returned. There he is. Okay, there he is standing up. Look at him. He's standing on the branch.
Oh.
Okay. Aww. Using his front paws to grab apples and his mouth to grab apples. He is having, he is having just an incredible time. You know, and a lot of people freak out about this. Like, there he is closer, standing up. A lot of people freak out about this, but this is cool, man.
That's cool.
This is very cool because, like, he is just doing what he is supposed to do. Yep. He's minding his own business, fattening up for the winter. He's not bugging anybody. Absolutely love him. Absolutely love him. If he wasn't so deadly, I would probably give him a hug.
Yeah.
I would probably run over and give him a hug.
But probably best not to.
Probably not. It could be dangerous. It could be dangerous. Big thank you to Black Dragon, Open Minded Clarity, Jeremy, Apollo, and Big Dog, and now Andrew for the amazing super chats tonight. Really, actually, before I'll leave Andrew up there for a little bit, then we'll where did Big Dog go? Okay, there he is. It's a great way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis, so thank you so much. Thank you to every veteran who is listening to this show. We love you. You always have a home here. And all of our regulars who are here nightly, we absolutely love you. Here comes the second half hour of the show. Get your horns up. Here we go. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio is underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Really do appreciate your listening ears. Want to remind you that if you missed portions of this show or others, go to our free archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor. hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on tonight with one of the best cryptid authors that North America has to offer, the lovely and talented Varla Ventura. Her website, varlaventura.net. That's where we found her, and that's where we like her. And that's why she is here once a month for Our Cryptid World. Varla, always a pleasure. Now, you wanted to get into experiencers. I kind of tipped my hat to what we'll be talking about in Dave 101 later, but you wanted to talk about experiencers.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say something kind of about that, and it relates to fairy tales, and it relates to our topics tonight. And it absolutely does bother me when, now, of course, as a researcher, there are certain stories I have chosen not to include over the years, or just haven't had a venue to share them. And, every once in a while you encounter someone where you as a investigator or whatever, you're kind of like, okay. Having said that, there's such a tremendous amount of value in the art of storytelling and the experience of sharing those experiences that I think, not only like hating on someone for, if you don't believe them, fine, like go somewhere else, or feel free to talk to them in a civil manner about that. But what I find is that people, if you really stop and listen to what someone is saying and what their experience is, it can be very validating for other people who have had those experiences. And in addition to that, there's something that happens, and I think that this is something that happens when you share ghost stories, when you share fairy tales, and something I'm very passionate about. When you are listening to someone, and you're listening to their experience, and you're taking part in that, you are suspending your own doubt, hopefully. And that could be even, this happens when you're watching a television show and suddenly, you're also in battle with, a wolf at your side. Like, there's a lot of times when we transform. And I really believe, and I think that this is why the art of storytelling is so important in cross-culturally, and especially in a hectic, modern, confusing society, because that ability to suspend your disbelief and accept and listen and get lost in that story is actually unlocking something really important in your brain. And if you can do that, then it also it kind of expands your mind. And so instead of dogging on someone's experience, consider expanding your mind, because if you expand your mind, then things are actually possible. And I'm not just talking about like you're going to see a Puka on the road. That's how you're going to discover lost medicines. That's how you're going to find cures. That's how you're going to invent something that changes the world, because you've suspended the doubt that it can't happen. And so that's what I think storytelling really is at its core, and the experiences that we are sharing. Aside from my personal beliefs of believing I'm a supernaturalist, Dave, I believe just about everything. But I think that is what is really critical that people forget about when they immediately go into that dismissive mode, that it's not always about whether or not you think it happened. It's about listening to that story and imagining what that picture looks like and letting your mind go there, letting your mind wander. I think it's vital. And when we lose that, that's also why radio shows like this are so important, because you're telling stories.
I think the big thing is, over the years, people have heard so many stories, and the more scientific and the more advanced that we become with cameras, with drones, with video cameras, with cell phones and smartphones, and everything in between, we want more. We always want more. Therefore, someone talking about aliens in their bedroom, or being abducted, or Bigfoot coming over to the house and picking up a pie off the windowsill, those stories are just no longer feasible to many in the public. And
Mm-hmm.
but the thing that I don't, and I understand they want proof. They're at the point where, like, we've had enough stories. We've had 70 years of stories since Roswell. Let's get to this. Let's make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we want to see those fairies. We want to have them hanging on out here. We want that video. But I mean, they don't believe anything either. But here's the thing that really irks me is how angry these people get over stories where they start yelling, I don't believe you. They start yelling, where's your proof? And then they start accusing about the experiencer being a liar. This is where I get a little dumbfounded, Varla, because I don't understand where all of this are, and I'll get into it more later in the show, but I don't understand where all this anger comes from.
Well, and not only that, but we're talking about things that are out of the spectrum of the concrete things right in front of us. And I'm sorry, but the supernatural and the paranormal, the fairy kingdom, certainly, it doesn't work on our command like everything else we think in the universe. It doesn't have a power up button. It doesn't have a on demand, you know, speak into your mic and it shows up. It doesn't work like that. You won't have an authentic experience if you think it did. So all I can think is that anger is coming from someone suppressing their own experience and not being ready to talk about it. Because that's usually where, you know, anger comes from.
Sure.
Suppression.
It's depression.
No, suppression.
Oh, and depression.
Yeah, well, yeah.
You know, but I mean, it's funny how just people react to all of this, because look, these experiences for a lot of people, whether you choose to believe them or not, are real to them. They're not psychological issues. You know, I look at my own self when somebody tries to call me out on something that happens outside of my abductions that have happened. Most of my experiences I've had eyewitnesses to. You know, Samantha Mowat in the forest with the aliens, my friend Dave in the forest with the Sasquatch, my friend Mike with the Sasquatch prince, Merle and Mark with being chased out of the forest, just to name a few. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I don't understand where, you know, the accusations come from and the anger that people have at this. And we never want it. We would sooner disbelieve and then go on social media, call somebody a fraud, rather than sitting down with them, having an actual human conversation with them to say, did this really happen? Because I'm having a tough time swallowing a pill on this.
Well, there's always going to be skeptics, and being a skeptic is perfectly welcome. Being a, someone who is attacking because they don't believe you is something else. And so I think, like, you know, a healthy dose of skepticism is perfectly fine. You know, we're used to that. That's you got to have your system of checks and balances. But I mean, I really don't know why someone would do that and then stick around. You know, it's like, if you don't believe it, you just go away. If it really angers you that much. But again, I just think it's this desperate desire to quantify something that at its core is non-quantifiable. And so it's a losing battle. And that actually, it just to go full circle, full spectrum here, that is the lesson of the fairy kingdom. That is the messing with you so you only see it out of the corner of your eye. That is reminding you that you are but a speck in a great universe with many things you will never understand. And, you know, you can call it whatever you want to call it, but there's a similarity to that. And the other thing that I think of too is just like the idea of knocking someone down for an experience, and then there becomes this, like, a barrier goes up, a collective barrier goes up. So then people, okay, so like you, Dave, you can take it. You've taken plenty of criticism. You'll probably take many more, and you know you'll live to fight another day. But other people who may feel more vulnerable will never share those experiences and will never validate each other because they are afraid of those people who type in all caps on Facebook, you know? I mean, I don't know. Like your audience is so kind, but I have been on other late night shows and made the mistake of looking at the chat rooms, and I have a policy of not really going in the chat rooms because not only are people cruel to the guests, they're cruel to the hosts, and it's just like, why are you spending 3 hours in the middle of the night listening to it if it's just making you so angry? But some people are just angry, they're just jerks.
Trust me, don't know anybody like that around.
Not us.
Not us for sure.
We're super friendly.
Speaking of fairies, once again, I'm going to say I've seen them. My daughter, my stepdaughter, who's now 18, she used to go sit in our backyard and in the green belt behind our house, and she would meditate and she would call the fairies in. And she would tell us stories about how they would land on her legs and land on her arms. I mean, there are just some beautiful fairies out there, that just seem to hang around. My area, of where I live around SOR headquarters, is very well known. Like, you go to any property, there is a fairy garden on almost every property out here, And I remember the last time I saw what I think was fairies, because we don't have lightning bugs up here. At least I've never seen them. But it was last year, in the late spring of last year, where I actually saw on my fence posts, there was one fairy on one fence post and one on the other, and they were all lit up. And I was just like, that is cool. And then all of a sudden they flew off.
I think you've seen more things than I have, even because you told me a really amazing story about that, log. Was it like a log guy kind of?
Yeah, the log guy.
The log guy. I was very jealous when you told me that story.
I'm sorry.
I've never seen anything quite like that. But just also on the realm of the fairy, but it also in the idea of dismissing people's stories. There's a history of that, dismissing indigenous stories in order to, write the agenda of colonization, right? That's a tale as old as time. And so I think that has lasting damage culturally and collectively, psychologically, to simply write off the stories that people are telling because you don't want to spend the time to find out why they're telling them.
True that, but okay, when I look at fairies, like with my daughter and the encounters that she had, she would get them even in the house, where she would sit there and say, sometimes she would have troubles falling asleep because these fairies were so bright and they'd be flying around her room at night. And she said it was the coolest
thing.
So how come, if fairies are such tricksters, that they are very friendly at times too?
They're in particular very friendly to children. And they can certainly, and of course, okay, so they can be very friendly to children, and they can be friendly with people who work with them respectfully. For example, you said she would meditate and call the fairies to her. I've mentioned my mom before on the show. She practices fairy magic, and that's a very specific kind of magic that she works to be, give back something to the fairy kingdom. And in return, her garden will sprout overnight. I'm not kidding. So, but just to back up a second, so there's the kingdom. So think of the kingdom of the fairy the way you might think of the plant, like the plant kingdom. There's not just one fairy. Fairy is an umbrella term for all of these different kinds of creatures. And some of them dwell deep in the forest and prefer to be left alone and really just kind of do their own thing and all solitary and grumpy. And some of them protect mountains, and some of them protect caves, and some of them live in water, and some of them live in your garden. So there's a kind of a full spectrum. So I always think of it like the way you think of plants. Like you've got trees, you've got grasses, you've got perennials, you've got all these different types of genus and species within the fairy kingdom, essentially. So there are certainly, and children in particular, and that is one of the reasons that I think fairy gardens work really well, is because children in particular gravitate toward them. And fairies like to be respected, and they like, they like gifts. That's a cross, like all fairies like gifts. They like shiny things, they like to be acknowledged, and they like to be thanked. And so if you're working with them in any kind of elemental or any kind of magical sense, or really just kind of trying to connect with them or ask them for lost objects, or just learn more about them, going about that with respect and leaving them cool things, or being a sweet little girl with a magical mind, or a sweet child like your daughter, a sweet girl with a magical mind who's bringing them in, and they're there to protect her and to be with her. So I think that happens a lot.
Okay, so when do they start to turn? Do they start to turn on people who may not recognize them for what they are for?
Well, some fairies don't turn. Some fairies just come around and protect and help. But other fairies are all about are nothing but turning. I mean, you've got fairies that kidnap babies and steal them away into the other world. And you've got, all kinds of tricksters. So they don't necessarily start to turn. They're sort of born that way, I guess. And it depends on the human that encounters them. For example, I read a story not long ago that was I had never read it before. And it was this guy basically doesn't listen to his dad says, he's a teenager, and he says, don't go on the road. Like, stay home, basically. Don't go out. And he says, well, he decides to disobey his father, and he sneaks out and he goes down this road, and he's walking down the road, and he sees quite a few little people, and they're carrying a corpse. And basically they go up to him, and this also shows that fairies have that the fairy kingdom and the underworld of the fairy kingdom is also the realm of the dead, or the summerland that we go to after we pass, that there's a real connection, that they are also psychopomps to kind of guide as well. Anyway, he encounters a bunch of little creepy guys carrying a corpse, and they come up to him, and they're very impish and kind of small. And they say, you have to bury this corpse, and you have to bury it before sunrise, and you have to bury it in a churchyard. And he basically gets this corpse on his back and starts marching down the road. And every time he thinks to slough it off, the fairies are behind him, following him, kind of taunting him and reminding him. And the corpse starts to direct him. Go that way, with its like creepy reanimated arms. And he ends up going to like 6 different churchyards, and he tries to dig a grave, and a corpse pops up out of the grave and says, you can't bury him here. And so he has to go to the next churchyard, and eventually he finds a free spot just before dawn, in the hollowed ground, and buries this corpse, and then hurries home. And the moral of the story is he will never go out past, midnight on that road, because there's something there that you're not supposed to see. And so they were transporting this corpse, and his punishment was to then have to find a resting place for this corpse. So you could twist that moral any way you wanted to. You could say, don't ever sneak out at night to your teenage kids, if anyone wants to use that. You might. It's not that you're going to encounter some creepy dude in a van. You might actually encounter little people carrying a corpse, and you would have to then bury it. That might scare them more.
I can see that. I can totally see that happening. I mean, why not? I mean, do fairies have magical powers, or do they just have the ability to mind play with you?
No, they totally are supernatural creatures with supernatural magical powers. Definitely. I mean, they can like transfigure into a room, and then you won't see them anymore. They can move quicker. They can move in between the realms. We cannot always move in between the realms. But when you look at Celtic mythology, you actually see a lot of hero stories where the hero goes into the mouth of a cave, which is the entrance to the fairy kingdom, and goes there specifically to retrieve wisdom and basically help whatever the situation is. They would go into the cave, they would meditate, they would ask and commune with the king or queen of the fairies and try and find some kind of wisdom or guidance in that way. And that is something that you see in cultures around the world, original cultures spending time in a dark place trying to connect with some kind of inner guide is a recurring theme, certainly.
Well, that's very cool. That's very cool. So
it is.
Can they put spells on you then?
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, you've got all kinds of there's usually some kind of bargain. There's a lot of bargaining in the fairy kingdom, a little of this for a little of that. And sometimes coming to collect years later, you see that over and over in fairy tales. Some of the most familiar ones we know of are like Rumpelstiltskin, right? Where you have to guess the name. And if you don't, then you have to give me your firstborn and all that kind of stuff. Those kind of things happen all the time, that sort of bargain. So there's certainly a lot of payment expected, payment rendered, curses that it tends to just be ill luck more than anything.
Right.
But with the Banshee, now that's a curse you wouldn't want to inherit. So that's a kind of a different creature of the Fae, and something that is typically or frequently inherited from family to family, either the ability to see the Banshee or the Banshee itself. And they're basically Italian, cryptid mobsters, Yes. So the Banshee is the one that screams, and it means death is nigh. And it's usually someone that you love is going to die. So that's not a fun one to encounter or inherit. So that can be viewed as a curse, but it also could be viewed as a blessing, right? Because it means you have the second sight and you can see the fairy kingdom. So you know what to look for.
That sounds like one of those old wives' tales. Like, when a bird is pecking at your window, it means that someone's going to die soon.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. But, there's a lot of stories about warning ghosts. So the Banshee, one of the reasons the Banshee is my favorite is because the Banshee, even though the word Banshee means of the fairy mound, Banshees, they almost straddle ghosts and fairies, and they are a really good representation of how that world was viewed and kind of overlaps as this kind of as the other world. But you have that kind of, it's the lady in gray or the lady in white that you keep seeing in the castle, and it means someone's going to fall ill. You see these stories there. You see them all around the world of someone reporting. It's not necessarily called a banshee always, but it's some kind of sound or sign that a family might see that they know it means that
right.
someone's. I mean, these days it might be a little more common that people know that someone falls gravely ill. They don't always die. So,
Varla, I'm going to get you to hold on right there because we are going to go to break here. At the top of the hour, Varla Ventura's Our Cryptid World happens once a month here on Spaced Out Radio. More fairy talk, more cryptid talk when we return with Varla Ventura at varlaventura.net. We're clear. We're clear.
Clear.
Hold on, I got a text message from someone.
It's from me.
I know. I just saw that. You vaping? Vaping?
Scandalous.
Scandalous. I thought I heard a banshee once. It was just Dave getting his nipples pierced. It's my audience.
Yep. Does make one scream.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's the clam. I think I got that one, clam. I think I got that one. Figure that one out. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Boy, are we Boring people. Rich Hilke's here, everyone. Had to build in some excitement there.
Yep. We're pretty exciting. This
Varla
is what we're like off air.
Varla and I will call each other every now and again. We'll be just like, yep.
Yeah, hey, how's it going?
Yeah, so...
Yeah, me too.
Saw some water dry on my drywall the other day.
Yeah, I painted. It was pretty cool, homeowners.
Mm-hmm. Did I tell you about...
we swapped design plans.
Latest flossing?
Yeah, it's frequent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's how we roll around here, Varla Ventura.
Yeah, it is. We just...
What color is that in your hair? Green or blue?
Well, it was blue. This freaking thing is always backwards. It was blue, and now it's sort of faded.
My hair is longer than yours now.
Teal. Yeah, it is. My hair is very short right now. So, yeah.
Thank you, G West, for that amazing super chat. Is it G West or is it Gwest?
Oh, good question. Let's go with Gwest.
Gwest.
That's cooler. I mean, there's nothing wrong with G West. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, and Clam is proud to announce that he popped a zit.
Come on now, guys.
Very nice there, Clam. Whitehead or blackhead, Clam, please let us know. D. McKenna, thanks for joining us.
I don't think you can pop a blackhead. You have to squeeze a blackhead.
Yeah. Yeah. We tried to do that with Fap's head, but it didn't pop.
How did we get down this road?
I know.
It's a dark.
Blame the clam.
Dark road.
Blame the clam. Gwest is fine. Gwest.
Okay.
Gwest.
So all one word.
Mm-hmm.
Love that. I'm just looking at this really cool.
Hey, Drake.
I'm looking in this really cool book here
yeah?
about this magical badass place in Ireland that I went to last time I was there. And there's a cave that they claim is where Halloween started, Samhain started. But there's 6 caves in Ireland that claim that, so it's totally awesome. Everyone says, we're the birthplace of Halloween. Yay! Wonder I love this country.
Reborn from Ash, how are you? Fab says, you can't pop this head. It's strong like bull. Mr. Moocher, what's happening? How you doing? Thank you for the compliment. Getting ready for hockey season?
Yeah, we're basically already in it. We're doing fall.
We don't start for a couple weeks here.
Our official season, because my son's I don't know what are your levels there? What do you call them?
Oh, they just changed them all to this soccer crap, this U9 and U.
Oh,
because it used to be
Sprites.
Here it used to be novice, Adam, Pee-wee, Bantam, midget, juvenile, and then junior. But they changed them all because when everybody started getting offended by everything, obviously the word midget. Yeah,
they stopped using midget, but we have mite, squirt, Pee-wee, Bantam. And then honestly, I'm not sure after that.
Yeah. So
I feel like that's so far down the road.
Okay. They went with all this U crap. And yeah.
So like that 10 and under, 12 and under. Yeah,
it's crap.
Yeah. Well, you know, my son's a goalie, so we're doing goalie camp. Yeah.
If you ever wanted to know a weird person in life, meet a goalie. It's true.
I think it suits me or him. It suits our family.
It's a different breed of human, honestly. Sovereign, how are you? I'm going to
He's
give
part Fae, I
I'm
think.
going to give a quick shout out here. Thank you to G West and ×2, Andrew, Big Dog, Apollo, Jeremy, Open Minded Clarity, and Black Dragon for the amazing super chats. It's a great way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. Thank you to all the veterans out there who are listening on in. We absolutely love you. You always have a home here with us. And, of course, all our regulars in the chat rooms, we absolutely love you. Thank you so much for being here every single night. Here we go, everyone.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio is underway tonight. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. I want to say hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America and digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Hagioscope. Hagioscope is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on tonight with our cryptid world. Varla Ventura is joining us. Her website, varlaventura.net. You can find her books at any major bookstore around North America. And thank you so much for joining us, Varla.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, yes. With your blue hair.
With my blue hair.
Blue hair.
Blue hair.
G West or Gwest is asking, do fairies like music or make music?
Both. Yeah, absolutely. Fairies like music. I'm sure there's probably even some fairies that like death metal. You know, the Banshee probably loves death metal. But fairies do make music, and that is actually one of the gifts that you can get from the fairy kingdom. Some people think that changelings, which are people who have been switched at birth with a fairy creature, and then humans that have been raised it with the fairies in the fairy kingdom, actually gain gifts, and some of those gifts can be incredible musical talent. So there's a long history of not only singing songs about the fairies and retelling their stories in that way, but also kind of fairies being muses towards some of the great musicians.
What kind of music? Or like, is that where you, or let me rephrase that. Is that where you hear these stories of people, hunters or prospectors walking through a forest and all of a sudden they hear this music playing in the background and they're not sure if it's actually their imagination or real music being played?
Yeah, that can also be part of that, like, glamour or trickery of the fairy, like hearing those enchantments and getting a little bit disoriented or being lulled into, a kind of a spell. Depending on where you are, like some fairies really try and, kind of keep it low key. But I would say generally, if you're in a situation where you actually would hear it, then that would mean that you are kind of, something's being shown to you. I don't think it's by accident. Sometimes in the stories or in cartoons and stuff, you hear it's like someone's just tromping through the forest and they happen upon this like fairy festival. But in fact, I think the fairies make themselves known and reveal themselves, much like I think, people will have, 10 people can walk into a room and not see or feel anything, and the 11th person can walk in and completely connect with the spirit. So I think fairies operate on that same way.
United Amendment is asking, how do I summon a fairy like a banshee?
So banshees cannot really be summoned. They're not really that type of spirit. You can't really the Banshee is not at anyone's command. The Banshee works for death and death alone. That is who the Banshee answers to. But other fairies can be summoned. You can certainly summon the more trickster fairies if you're trying to really, bring more like giddiness and trickery into your life, or if you're really trying to trick someone and you want to kind of invoke that trickster fairy, but you have to be warned that, just consider yourself warned. You are the one that's going to end up tricked. Your best bet for summoning fairies would be to try and summon some of the elementals, so fairies that work around the elements such as earth or water. So garden fairies or, some of the water fairies. So whether that's a mermaid or just something like in a lake or some other kind of river or stream where you can connect with the fairy kingdom. Those are a little bit milder and probably won't, I wouldn't mess around too much like, with mermaids and things like that, but because they could drown you. But if you're just trying to summon a fairy to get like some fairy magic, you can also create sort of a fairy altar inside or outside your home, much as you might to another kind of deity, and give them offerings. So that can be shiny things and wine and cakes and other kind of, they like keys, little delightful things like that. And you can write notes and you can be very clear about what you're asking for. You want someone to protect your children. You want someone to protect your home, look after your animals. You want your garden to grow. As long as you're not asking for anything like too greedy, like it's not like you can write a note and be like, make me famous. It doesn't work like that. That's when you're going to get tricked. That's when you're going to sell your soul at the crossroads. So
very cool. All right, let's go to Vanner, who is asking, Varla, do you have any favorite fairy tale books?
Well, this is my favorite. Shameless plug. Fairies, Pookas, and Changelings, A Complete Guide to the Wild and Wicked Enchanted Realm by Varla Ventura. I also like my Banshees, Werewolves, and Vampires book. But other than my own work, I love William Butler Yeats has a collection of stories that were published, I think, in 1859, but don't quote me on that. They've been republished many, many times. They're in the public domain. It's Fairy and Folk Tales of Ireland. I have a big, thick volume. I've had it for years. It's full of songs and poems and stories about changelings and banshees. And I love that book because he really defines the fairy kingdom into categories. So he's got like the trooping fairies and the water fairies. And so a lot of my view of the fairy kingdom has been colored by his work. And then my other favorite book is like not that great to sit down and read, but it's a book called British Goblins, and it's by a man named William Wirt Sykes. And he was the consulate general in Wales at the turn of the 20th century. And he kind of went around and did something like Yeats did in Wales and collected all these wonderful stories. He was fascinated with Welsh culture. And if you can just kind of, I know that some people, especially in the US, certainly kind of just think, well, isn't Wales just England? But there's a very rich and unique culture in Wales, and a huge, huge tradition with the fairy and the fae folk. And not only that, but all kinds of interesting customs that had been dismissed. And this man, he was there representing the US, actually, I believe, in Wales. And he said that, he was just so interested, and he could see that a lot of these stories were kind of fading out of fashion. And so this book is called British Goblins, and it's this massive volume. You can actually find it in public domain if you know where to look, like on Gutenberg.org. You can find this book, and it's a little thick to read, but there's some real gems in there, including all kinds of great things about like things at the crossroads and fairy traditions and burial practices. And I honestly, I've included some of those stories in my works, and I still go back and read that and find a new story each time. In fact, I just found one like late last year. of this story where they wrapped a corpse in a shroud and then pulled it up through the fire, through like the hearth, up through the fire, and then out the top of the roof. And he said, I have no idea if this was one of those situations where they just told me an outrageous story because I was an outsider and they wanted to see how I would react, or if there's actually any kind of deeper meaning here, but I'm just recording it the way it was told to me. So he did not dismiss his experience, the experiencer.
Jose wants to know, what do you know about Oberon, the Fairy King?
So Oberon the Fairy King, I mean, that's kind of like from Midsummer Night's Dream. You had Oberon and a guy, like, I'm pretty sure it was Titania was the queen, and you had the king and queen of the fairy realm. Over and over again, you will see references to a fairy king or a fairy queen. Usually a fairy queen is more prominent, and it doesn't always have the same name depending on what story, what era it's coming from. But the idea being that there was someone, sort of a grand fairy, who presided over the entire fairy kingdom. The fairy king is less common. In fact, I'm not sure that Oberon was really much of anything before Shakespeare, but the fairy queen actually was much more common because you had a much more matriarchy present during a lot of the times that these original stories were taking place or being lived, right? So you had over and over again, these Celtic queens who were personified in the underworld as being kind of like the queen of that space. So I know more about them than I do the king.
All right. Mennonite Abe is asking, there was a recent Bigfoot video out of Michigan. Did you both see it, and your thoughts? I have not seen it yet.
I have not seen it either. So can you chat us like where?
Oh, well, we'll try.
Let's try and find it, because I'd like to see that.
Lynn is asking, what is the difference between a fairy and a sprite? One's a beverage.
Yeah, one's a beverage. So a fairy and a sprite, I mean, a sprite can be a fairy. Again, fairy can be kind of this umbrella term, but a sprite is often associated with water. So you'll see a small kind of lithe creature that tends to spend time on lily pads and things like that. They're often very similar to like insects or dragonflies or things like that are kind of magical and hang around water. And they're pretty elusive, but that might be even, I mean, it's possible that's what was hanging around your daughter.
Could be.
Dave.
Could very well be. All right, let's get to another one. Nicola is asking, my girlfriend might have fairies in her garden. Is it dangerous for her to garden there?
No, it's great. She'll be fine. However, I would highly recommend that you leave something, that you leave a designated spot and you plant something, or have a pot full of, some kind of nice, smaller little, like a little stones and things like that, just to kind of give them their own designated spot, and then periodically leave something pretty or shiny there, a shiny stone or a gem or things like that. I have a small one in my garden. I actually just have sort of like a little pot that I move around, and it's got, it has clover, and it's got some wildflowers in it, and it's got a little house and that has a door that I just leave things inside. And I don't know, sometimes it might be my son taking things out. Sometimes it might be me taking things out. We leave things. So, yeah.
Well, that's kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting. Tony is saying, does every garden have fairies or guardians? And do I ask for permission to be working in there? Tony's from the Wales in the UK.
Woo! Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if every garden in the entire world has fairies, but we should go into that assuming that is the case, because fairies are, their domain is the natural world. So I would certainly go into it asking permission and, leaving some kind of gift or offering. That's never going to hurt you. And it's always going to help. So, I don't think I just okay. So for example, when I moved into the house I live in now, there were a lot of, mystery plants and things like that. And it actually was pretty barren. It was like a lot of grass, which is like boring, lawn. Right. So I started out kind of, cutting some of the sod out. And one of the first things I did was just bury some things in the ground right there, just to kick things off on a positive note, put some stones that I had gotten in a couple different places that were really important to me, and just kind of was like, hey, is everybody okay with me digging here? Because I really want this garden to thrive. So I think I know a lot of gardeners that do that kind of thing. Their houseplants will have stones in them. They will plant a tree and put, a quartz crystal at the bottom, and they don't even necessarily know why they're doing it. And they might not even say, hey, I believe in fairies. But there's a lot of gardeners that pay a lot of attention to the kinds of amulets that they put in their garden.
I have a tree garden and a rock garden where I have a fairy door.
Nice.
I do. I actually found a cute little one at a garage sale, and I'm like, that would look great on my tree. So that way they have a doorway. They can now enter my garden.
I would expect nothing less of you, Dave.
That's how I roll.
What I love is there's actually one in my neighborhood. I think I've put a picture of it up on my my neglected Instagram feed, but it's there's a tree in my town that has a door, and it's not a door that somebody put in. It has a door. I swear to you, it looks just like a little door. It's the way the tree is grown. I mean, all it needs is a little doorknob. It's like I'm tempted to go up and knock on it, but it's just over the property line enough that I'm not sure, how that would go over. I could do it in the dead of night.
Do it. You need to.
I will.
You do it. We got about 5.5 minutes here before we got to go to break at the bottom of the hour. Varla Ventura is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Evan is asking, did lightning bugs inspire some of the fairy lore?
Probably. There's probably some people who, have never seen anything like that. And you also have some of those phenomenon like the will-o'-the-wisp, which is actually a kind of phosphorescent gas that kind of creates like these lights in the reeds. So there are some natural phenomena. There's glow-in-the-dark mushrooms. There's all kinds of stuff that also have found their way into the fairy and folk literature. But the argument there would be that those things were created by the fairy kingdom. Definitely. I mean, Dave, I grew up on the West Coast. And so when I moved to the Midwest, there are lightning bugs here. And it really threw me off the first time I saw one. It's a very magical thing. But I've heard some pretty incredible stories of people seeing, lightning bugs or not even knowing what they are and seeing them in this kind of like tremendous path and passageway, where they've kind of followed them somewhere. So, I think they've definitely got some kind of magical element to them, whether they're of the fairy kingdom or not.
Tewas is asking, do you think that Brian Froud's depiction of the fairy realm is accurate?
I absolutely love Brian Froud. I love the illustrations in the Brian Froud's fairy books, and it is based heavily on original stories and especially Irish folklore. So those images themselves were, the fairies were well researched to kind of come to the illustrations of what they look like. And my mom had that book when I was a kid. So I still have that copy. Actually, it's kind of falling apart. So I love that. I've never really there's not a lot of text in it, but it certainly has some incredible drawings, especially of like the doorway on the rock on the island that leads to the fairy kingdom, and is a beautiful, beautiful depiction of the fairy kingdom. Yeah, I mean, if it does really look like that, that's great. That's what.
Oh, well,
that's
I
what
think
we want.
that's cool. I think that is
And
very
some of it's scary and creepy too, right? You got like the creepy things, Jenny Green teeth creeping out of the swamp, and crawling out of the mossy depths to grab your children's ankles and stuff. So yeah, it's definitely
wonderful stories.
delightful.
3 minutes to go. Alien Critter is asking, what is a good book on invocation?
You mean to just like invoke anything?
Sure, why not? Let's invoke.
Okay, let's see. Well, I just read a book very recently, and I'm looking at it here. Now, if you're talking about like witchcraft, and you want to learn more about like being an initiate in the witchcraft tradition, like the Alexandrian tradition, there's a book I just read, which is called, I'm looking at it right here, Initiation into Witchcraft. It's by Brian Kane. Now, I am not an initiate into the Alexandrian form of witchcraft, but there's a lot of amazing and really beautiful information in there. So that's kind of a nice source, a new source that I've come upon recently. I mean, it depends on what you're trying to invoke. There are a lot of spell books out there. There's a lot of work on various types of magic. So I guess it kind of depends on what you're trying to invoke. I really like, there's also a book called Candle Magic by a woman named Jackie Smith. She is the proprietor of Coventry Creations, and she makes like the best witchcraft candles in all the land. And she wrote a book about candle magic. I think that's a really great way to foray into invocation, is to use candle magic. Especially using her approach, because it will kind of get you where you need to be. So, yeah, if that's what you mean. I'm not really sure if that's exactly.
We got 1 minute here. I want to ask one more question. Are fairies and other little people connected to UFOs or ETs in some way? This is for Tony.
Totally. I think they are. I don't mean to say that all UFO experiences are fairy experiences, or like I had mentioned before, that all poltergeist experiences are hobgoblins. But I do think that there's some overlap, and it could be that people were reporting things 300 years ago that now we are calling something else. It could be that we are experiencing a different level of beyond the veil now that we have advanced technology, etc. But I do think that there's some connection between seeing the hidden realm that's
Right.
becoming less and less hidden.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Carla, I'm going to get you to hold on right there, because we are going to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. Sometime I get my top and bottom of the hours mixed up. I don't know why it happens sometimes, but we're at the bottom of the hour here at the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio. We got Varla Ventura for another hour. Then at the bottom of hour number 3, it's Dave 101, the Newswire, and the Thought of the Dave. A jam-packed second half of the show with Varla Ventura coming up next on Spaced Out Radio. All right, we're clear. I'm taking a bathroom break. I'll be right back.
Sounds good.
You can hang out with the chat room if you want.
I'm going to take a break too. I'm going to stretch my core back. Yeah.
I'll put you on mute and I'll go like this. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. Varla Ventura will be here any second. I'm going to ask a favor if you don't mind. Could you just remember, audience in our YouTube chat room, to put your questions in capital letters? They're easier for me to find and then be able to ask Varla. If you don't mind, I would appreciate that. We've got just about 45 seconds, Varla. You can put your mic off of mute.
Oh, I thought you did that. I didn't realize that was me.
You did it before me. Low Pro, how you doing? Andy Jones, good to see you. Who else is here that I'm missing? Pegsy76, welcome to our channel. Big thank you to G West and ×2, Andrew, Big Dog, Apollo, Jeremy, Open Minded Clarity, and Black Dragon for the amazing super chats. Mitchell, how you doing? Here we go, everyone, with the second half of the show starting right now. Second half of Spaced Out Radio is underway. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dave Scott. Good to have each and every one of you here tonight with us. Want to remind you that if you miss portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on tonight with Varla Ventura's Our Cryptid World. Varla visits us once a month to talk about all things weird and strange. Tonight we are talking about fairies and the fairy folklore. And I love this topic, and so does Varla. And I know you do too, by the response in the chat rooms. Her website, varlaventura.net. You can find all of her books anywhere in North American bookstores. Yes, there are still bookstores out there. And Varla, we're going to continue with audience questions here. Dee McKenna is asking, do you believe black-eyed children are folklore?
I think that they could be connected to changelings. Actually, was once on a show with the late Rosemary Ellen Guiley, who was a big, she wrote and studied black-eyed children more than I did. And if anybody doesn't know what they are, it's basically like these kids. Usually they look like, you know, sort of slightly older children, not like really not toddlers or anything. And they'll come up to your door, they come up to your car, and they look like kids. And then when you look at them, their eyes are completely black, and you're basically like not supposed to invite them in. So I personally had not ever, I mean, I've never seen any of the black-eyed children. And I've heard stories on like radio shows and podcasts and things, but I don't know anyone who had actually encountered one. But Rosemary Ellen Guiley had researched them and had actually interviewed a lot of people. And so we just happened to be on this show one time together, a radio show. And we actually started talking off air about the connection between changelings, which are the kind of kidnapped fairy children. So fairy children are left in the human realm, and then human children are brought to the fairy realm. So we talked about that for a while, and I still maintain that my theory is that if they are anything, they're that they are somehow kind of switched to see if they can get away with things. But they're pretty creepy.
Really, I don't want to run into them.
I don't either, because
I really don't want to run into them.
I feel like it's almost as if, I mean, it feels like a test, and it feels like a test I might fail because of the appearance of the child, right? Because there's this part of you that's always going to think, am I actually just turning my back on a child? And that's a recurring theme throughout fairy tales. Whether or not you actually trust your instincts, whether or not you do the right thing. And sometimes the right thing is completely ignoring the fairy. And sometimes the right thing is stopping and paying attention to them. More often it's ignoring it. You see that a lot. Like, just keep on walking, just whistle on past the graveyard.
Right? That's just creepy. That is just creepy. I will say that right now. Creepy. Creepy. All right. Well, let's move on to another question here from Evan. Are fairies attracted to mushrooms or melons more?
Is that a joke?
I don't know.
I mean, fairies and mushrooms have a long history. A fairy mound or a fairy circle is frequently a circle of mushrooms. In art, fairies are frequently depicted either as mushrooms, wearing mushrooms, or sitting on mushrooms. In particular, the hallucinogenic or the red-capped kinds. Red caps are a term of fairies that are also associated with mushrooms and associated with bloody battles. So I'm not really sure about the melon part. I don't get that one.
Me either.
Okay.
Me either.
Glad I'm not alone here.
I don't get it.
Maybe I don't know.
Probably
a boob joke. I don't know.
Could be.
And then you're going to need to clarify.
What's the difference between, say, little people, gnomes, and leprechauns?
So little people would just be the umbrella term. The wee folk, the little people, the good folk, they're all different kind of interchangeable terms for the fairy or fairy kingdom. Leprechauns and gnomes are different. Leprechauns are sort of the forest miser bachelor, the cobbler of the fairy kingdom. They like to be left alone. They like nice materials and cloth and to make their shoes and things with. And they work hard, and they do have a good solid cache of gold, but it's frequently not a pot at the end of a rainbow. And actually that's, like, there is no end of a rainbow, right? Like, everybody knows that. It's a refraction of light. So no matter where you stand, you would never actually, if you can see the rainbow, you'd never actually be able to see its end. So that's sort of a commentary on greed, get rich quick scheme, the trickery and the glamour of the fairy kingdom, the idea of the gold being at the end of the rainbow. And that's a sort of more kind of modernized idea. But leprechauns do keep a golden store, and you can sometimes get at it, but not very much of it. And it's usually in a purse, a magical purse is where they keep their monies.
Oh, them cheapos. All right, Adam is asking, is there a correlation between fairy sightings and oil field sites?
I don't know. I've never heard that. I mean, I don't know.
Be interesting.
Yeah, that would be very interesting to look into, because you do see a lot of reportings of paranormal phenomenon around, like, mining sites and things like that. So it's kind of stands to reason that there could be something, but I've never looked into that.
All right, moving on. You Watcher wants to know, how real are gnomes? Gnomes
are super real. And so we do think of gnomes as these, like, the guy on Dave's shelf behind him there. We do think of gnomes as, Yeah, there we go. These kind of pointy-hatted, bearded fellows, and that is one depiction of gnomes. Gnomes are usually kind of smaller guardians. So gnomes are placed in gardens because they are actually guardian spirits, and they're there to protect the hearth and home. And you see these in particular in Scandinavian cultures. You have the Nisi or the Tomte. They are these little kind of red-hatted creatures, partially carved out of wood. Sometimes it will just be a decorated log, and it's placed on a step, especially during the winter months. And it's meant to bring in luck and ward off evil spirits. And these are just as people wear a cross. It's a representation of something that they believe in and that they believe is real. So people will have these sort of little icons to represent the real creature that's out there in the forest or the tundra or whatever. So.
Now, from what David Weatherly told me about gnomes, is that they are very vindictive if you cross them.
So that's true of a lot of the fairies in the fairy kingdom. And gnomes in particular have also have a strong connection to mines and kind of the earth in a lot of ways. You'll see, you'll hear stories about things that kind of look a lot like gnomes, or like the Tommyknocker type things. Often I kind of consider those different categories, but you do see this idea of a gnome, kind of like you would think of like the seven dwarves, like that kind of thing. You see gnomes kind of more on the inner reaches of caves and stuff like that. But I think they're tricksters. I mean, it's no joke that they can kind of shift around in your garden. So I think it's pretty easy to appease them. You give them somewhere beautiful to be. You give them some privacy. Gnomes are not particularly social, so they're not going to really like want to hang out and be, you don't put the gnome on your curb. You know what I mean? You put the gnome kind of back and underneath the tree.
Very true, but
that's cool.
But yet they're also said to be protectors, and this is why it's good to have even garden gnomes in your garden. So, what is their protection point?
So they like to protect beautiful things, right? Or like a person that and I mean, this is like fairies in general too. They like to protect a person that they might have an affinity for, children, vulnerable animals. So those are kind of their domain of protection. Now you have like fairies that live more in rural areas and live in barns, and they'll protect the horses and the creatures that live there and take care of them. And you just have to leave them a little dish of milk and an offering of some kind of food. And then your your livestock will be healthy. In a garden setting, you would get like an abundance of fruit or, whatever it is that you're trying to get. And so you would in turn leave the gnome, something delicious that they would like to eat, or some kind of thank you. If it's a statue, just leave it a thank you. Like it can be like a shiny thing or something of value, or just something that has a lot of meaning to you that you're willing to give up and give to the fairies. They like meaningful things. They don't want you to just go out and buy them diamond rings, right? They want something that you harvested when you were at the sea, or that you took down from the cliff.
Sinister is asking, do fairies actually have dust?
I think that there are species, for lack of a better term, of fairies, especially that live in the garden, that use pollen as dust. And I think that idea of the dust actually comes a lot from pollinators in the garden. Fairies are also attracted to the same kind of plants that you have, butterflies and bees and other pollinators. They live in kind of a similar environment. And so I think the pixie dust kind of thing is actually can be traced to pollen. I think that's where a lot of the stories come from, trying to get them to carry the pollen to kind of magically create the fruit in the garden.
Very interesting. Okay. So the fact that we have these creatures, they run around our yards, they run around our forested areas, they run around all sorts of places. what is their job? Are they there to protect the environment? Are they there to protect the forests? Are they there to protect the water supplies? What is their job?
I think different fairies have different jobs. I would say in general, they are there to remind us of our lack of understanding and knowledge of the non-visible world is probably their primary role. But I think that you have fairies, again, you have fairies that protect, you have fairies that protect the wild. So some of those trickster fairies are really protecting the wild. They don't want you going off road, they don't want you going on your ATV across a endangered species, marshland or whatever. So mermaids could be protecting the sea. They could also be protecting themselves. They could also be there to shepherd the souls of, people who die at sea, and they're simply psychopomps. I think that the fairy kingdom is so complex. There's not one job. They don't have one role. They all have different desires and domains.
Big snore for my dog there. I was like, what the heck is that?
He's got his own domain.
I was like, is the bear at the window?
No,
just my dog.
No, you would think the dog would bark if the bear was at the window.
He's sleeping. Varla Ventura is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Low Pro is asking, is there any information about what gnomes or fairies actually eat?
Oh, yeah. There's quite a few stories talking about sort of fairy feasts. So I would say that the number one rule with any kind of offering that you leave is that it should not be scraps. It shouldn't be like, you ate your dinner and, instead of throwing this leftover stuff away or putting it in the compost or whatever, you're going to put it on a plate for the fairies. That's not going to cut it. You need to give them a portion off the bat. And just as in any kind of magical offering, whether it's for, you're making an offering to the dead, it's witchcraft, however you're doing it, you need to do it with intention. So that can be part of your own dinner, but it needs to intentionally be set aside. I, of course, wouldn't recommend leaving pies on your windowsill or large scraps of meat out and about. But I think you're safe typically with things like milk, oats, oat cakes, wine is always good, a bit of cider, a bit of beer, things like that you fruit.
Drunk gnomes.
Yeah.
Drunk gnomes. That's exactly what we need in this life, is drunk gnomes raising hell in our gardens.
Yeah. Riding their gnome motorcycles across our lawns.
Playing that rock and roll.
But I would just say, like, in general, make sure that whatever it is fresh and clean and set out with intention. You don't have to go on a gnome grocery run, but you shouldn't just give them, the scraps from your plate.
No.
They'll be insulted, and they'll actually probably, do something to they'll break something, or at worst pox someone. Best case scenario, they'll break some china.
Why do we want them around?
I meof who wouldn't want these kind of actually, if you look at a lot of the older stories, you kind of have this relationship where people don't necessarily want them around. They just want them to not cause harm or cause mayhem. They don't want to run into them at night. They don't want to encounter them. It's actually like a constant evasion, and everything is to placate the fairies so that you don't have to have an encounter with them. You see that over and over again in literature. It's like, that's part of it, of course, is the idea that you're keeping the children close to the hearth. in order to protect them, right? But the other part of it is that there's a certain reverence there, and that fear and that reverence of that other kingdom that we don't fully understand. I think that we want them around because we want to, because we're believers. We want to believe. We want to see. We want them to know that we see them. And I think if you are interested in doing any kind of like fairy work in that way, on whether it's a kind of cursory way of like, yeah, I'm going to hedge my bets, or you want to do some kind of deeper work and meditation and see what the fairies bring back for you, whatever end of the spectrum you're on there, they certainly have a lot to teach us. And every time I read a fairy story, something changes in my worldview. And sometimes it's just laughter, right? But other times it really, these stories exist to also kind of help us reevaluate where we're at in our own lives. So that's another real value, and what fairies teach us.
Okay. What are the ones we should try and stay away from?
I mean, you probably, Pookas sound funny, but they're not at all. You probably want to avoid them. They really, these are the ones that'll make you like wet your pants in the middle of the night. You know what I mean? Like they're scary. They're not going to kill you. There's not a lot of fairies that cause death. That's not really their thing, but they are comfortable with death, and they're perfectly okay with scaring you. Like someone had asked about summoning a banshee. I personally wouldn't recommend that. If you know that you have a banshee in your family, if your family has inherited a banshee and you want to ask them something, I mean, usually banshees, they just accept it, come and go. Somebody, and I can't remember if it was on the last time we were on, or if someone wrote me this, but they said that I think someone actually wrote me this, that their family, they hear like what sounds like a cat meowing, and it means that someone's going to die in their family. And like many generations have actually heard this, and they know that it's what it means. So yeah, there's actually a lot of fairies that you probably best to avoid, but they're the ones that tend to keep more in the wild. And if you are going to go and trespass into their territory, you just need to go at it respectfully, not unlike you would if you were, you're not charging into the forest looking for Bigfoot with like an axe, saying, come and get me, right? You're going out there and you're trying to be hopefully relatively respectful of the environment. And I think fairies, fairies are the same. Yeah.
We got 3 minutes left before the top of the hour. Amy is asking, any relation to harmonics in your experience?
So I'm not really familiar with harmonics unless you're talking about like singing bowl kind of, or like meditation based on certain sounds. I definitely think if that's what you mean, then I do think that fairies respond to certain tones. And like some of those lower toned wind chimes, I think, can attract fairies. My mom has a lot of stuff going on her property, and she's got some of those real low-keyed wind chimes that make real deep sounds. And then she's also got like a well in her garden that she's put up, and she regularly makes contributions to it and asks and thanks them. And we have literally seen her garden grow overnight. Like it's kind of crazy. So
that is weird.
But I'm not really sure. I mean, I'd have to Google exactly, or, ask you exactly what you mean by that. But if you're talking about like the connection with sound, then yeah, definitely.
Well, that's cool. That's cool. All right. Well, with time winding down here, let's kind of get into the whole chime thing, because I know around here, a lot of people put bells up or wind chimes up for two reasons. Number one, attracting the fairies, but number two, scaring off the bears.
Scaring the bear. I was going to say, yeah, the sound, right?
So with that being said, are these fairies, these gnomes or anything like that, do they help keep property safe from any sort of wild animal?
You can definitely, well, I don't know if you can they can ward off wild animals, but the bell or the sound of a chime or the bell itself is usually a call to any kind of spirit or fairy. So it's used in ritual. It's used in, all kinds of rituals, including Catholic rituals. The bell is very significant. There's a reason people ring the church bells to call people into the church. It's not just about, hey, everybody, it's time for lunch, right? It's about connecting with that ethereal and the sound that happens. So I don't know if you can set your property up to ward off bears and guarantee no bears, but then get like the good fairies. But I think that they can protect your property and they can protect your family. And so if that means warding off, or that the bear sniffs and goes on down the road to the apple tree instead of your land, then yes. But they're not going to like keep deer from eating all of your pumpkins, unfortunately.
This is true. Varla, I'm going to get you to hold on right there. Unfortunately, we are 2 hours down. We only have Varla Ventura for another 30 minutes here on Spaced Out Radio. And we love her around here because she joins us once a month for our segment we call Our Cryptid World. You can find any of Varla's books at any major bookstore around North America. And of course, her website, varlaventura.net. Our Cryptid World with Varla continues right after this. Then it's Dave 101 at the bottom of the hour. All right, we're clear.
So do you think that bear was a young bear, or did it look like a...
No, I wouldn't say he's an old bear. He's probably 3-4 years old. Like, he's a good size.
Mm-hmm.
He's a good size. Healthy. Very healthy. Look very happy. Like, I won't call him in. I won't tell people where he's seen, because...
Are there people around you that are anti-bear? Let's just say it like that.
Look, when it comes... I'm not as afraid of bears as I am with cougars.
Yeah, well, cougars will come in and like snatch your toddler.
Cougars are just assholes. Okay, they really are. And this guy is not doing anything. The majority of people here understand, just let the wildlife be.
Yeah.
Okay, it's funny because the minute the bear's out of the area, all our deer come back, and the minute the bear's in the area, can't find a deer for obvious reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I got a mama with twins who is always in our area, always, and she hadn't been around the last few days,
making herself scarce.
Yeah. So, the majority of people here, they understand it, that it comes with the territory. They don't even bother calling it in. The majority of people who do call it in are the people who just moved here from other towns or Vancouver.
A more urban area that they're not used to. Yeah. Okay. Now I have a crazy story for you, because where my sister and her husband and their kids, they live like even further up the hill from where my parents live, which is like really rural, outside of in the Sierra Nevada foothills. And they're all like off grid and
sounds like our listener Joe, same area.
Yeah, they could be friends. Who knows?
Who knows?
So my sister lives way up there, and they had this like crazy experience. And all the years, of course, growing up there, there's a lot of rattlesnakes in that area, and there's some areas that in that part of the foothills that have just been completely destroyed by hydraulic mining, like back in the 1800s, when they would just get these big cannons and blast away the hillside to get the gold out. So as a result, there's almost like these kind of like desert-like areas in what otherwise had been kind of a forested place. And so it's super, like we used to camp down there and hang out down there, but there's always rattlesnakes in that area. And because this year was so dry, my sister had this pretty fat rattlesnake under her house.
Oh no.
And they've got, a couple of dogs, one of whom would be more inclined to try and like hunt it. They've got several kittens and 3 kids, right? They're older kids, but they're still kids living on their, everybody's in in the property, and it's like, what do you do, right? And what had happened is, it was normally that part, it doesn't usually have rattlesnakes. They have lots of bear on their property, but they don't normally get rattlesnakes there. And they think that just because it had been so incredibly brutally hot, that the snake actually went under their house for
air conditioning,
for shelter. Yes. And so, to their credit, in spite of all they had kept all the animals inside, and they left it alone. That was the first rule. Rule number one is leave it alone. And they were hoping that it was just taking respite for the day, and then was going to like slither on its way. And the next day it was still kind of there. And so my brother-in-law started researching like how to deal with it. And it's pretty intensive. So he and his son, who's, my nephew, who's actually the one who designed like my Varla Ventura logo that's on my website. He's really talented. And anyway, so they basically got this like 5-gallon bucket and a long stick with like a pole on the end. And they came home, and the snake had moved, but it was like in their driveway.
Oh no.
And they somehow, not only did they got it, what you have to do is you have to like get the snake, kind of irritate it so it grabs onto the pole, and then shove it into the bucket, and then put the lid on the bucket, which is the hard part. And then they took it down. They took it about, 3 miles away to where its natural habitat would be. And they chucked it out, and you got a mad rattlesnake now, and they chucked it out into the scrub and then ran. And my sister said they came back, and they came back not only with the bucket, but with the lid. Everybody was so impressed because they didn't kill the rattlesnake. They handled it, and they came back with the lid. So it was kind of, because she moved onto this property, and there was a bear trail on the property. And so they'll fire a gun sometimes to scare it off, but they will never shoot it. And that's an agreement that they made when they bought that property. We bought their territory, and this is their crossing path. So yeah.
Not me, man. Not me. Nope.
I know. I was like, I don't know. I think I would. I said I actually might have like freaked out and killed it, especially with like kids around.
Yep.
And she said, "How? Shoot a gun under my house? Like there was no.
You got to torch the house. That's exactly.
Just burn it down.
You got to burn it down. Hold on 1 second here, because we only got about 28 seconds left. Sage Necro, welcome to our channel. Thank you for joining us. And bears do fear Chad Smith, that's for sure. And Fat Bass, how's it going, man? Good to see you. D. McKenna, good to see you. Big thank you to Black Dragon, Open Minded Clarity, Jeremy, Apollo, and ×2, Big Dog, Andrew, G. West, and Smelly Michelle for the wonderful super chats. Here we go at the last half hour with Varla.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Here we go with the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Want to say hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America and digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club, Hagioscope. Hagioscope is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as a clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show. For the final time tonight, we introduce Varla Ventura. She comes on once a month for a feature that we like to call around here our Cryptid World. And, of course, her website, varlaventura.net. You can find any of her books in any major bookstore across North America. Varla, thank you so much for being with us once again.
Thanks for having me once again.
Oh, yeah. We absolutely love you here. Love you
Thank
here.
you.
We're Varla Ventura fans, just so you know. We do that around here. Varla, for everyone and every story that you have heard, tell us a story that's really weirded you out where you just couldn't put your finger on, whether it's about fairies, Pookas, changelings, gnomes. Is there a story that really sticks with you?
Yeah, there's a few. I think that some of the changeling stories are pretty disturbing, and especially kind of given the lens of modern times. Just again, a changeling is a fairy switch. So it's a baby that is left in place, a fairy baby that's left in place of a human baby, or a human baby that's taken away to the fairy kingdom. And some of those stories are particularly haunting and disturbing. You have, a time in which women are giving birth in their homes, and so certain precautions are taken to keep fairies out so that the baby isn't snatched away. You have the idea of birth defects and postpartum depression, that of course there were not words or names for those then. So those were often attributed to being changelings. Anything that was unusual was considered, or abnormal in any way, was considered to be part of the fairy kingdom. And there are some pretty creepy stories surrounding that, surrounding the idea of a baby being taken into the fairy kingdom, and how can you get it back, or people being accused of raising a changeling baby because the child ate a lot and grew at an enormous rate, or had an unusual appearance. And we can look at that today and kind of see how people might have explained away certain like anatomical anomalies, but also just the idea that something can, you could be in this little cottage in the middle of, Donegal, and with your nearest neighbor miles away, and something more sinister can come in the night and take your child. So those are always very haunting. William Butler Yeats has some pretty disturbing descriptions of the changelings and how to kind of thwart them and things like that. So I think that those always stick with me. The idea that even in your most safe place, you could look down into the crib and something else could be there. So those kind of really haunt me, I think.
And I can see where they would haunt you. I mean, or anybody for that mind. But what kind of damage can some of these creatures do to people? Are they killing people? Are they moving towards harming people? Are they affecting the brakes on our cars? What are they doing?
I mean, mermaids are kind of the mermaids are the ones that can kill you, really. Like of any of the creatures in the fairy kingdom, in that great, kingdom of the fae, mermaids are probably the ones to worry about the most. I know you don't like sharks, but mermaids are probably right up there in terms of predator. But part of that is because there's it's dangerous, right? Like the sea is dangerous, and mermaids have this sort of allure and trickery that can cause you to think that that you can live under the water with them. I would say that they're not alone, but by and large, most of the stories of any kind of real harm or death coming tend to be from mermaids, or some kind of drowning, or some other kind of like boggy water creature. More often, you just have some mayhem. You have like there's some stories, some things that are actually considered banshees that seem very poltergeist-like. There's a malevolent banshee. There's a few stories about a malevolent banshee that I've read, where it basically comes in and thrashes your house like a wild wind, and screaming all the while, which sounds much more kind of like poltergeisty, right? That it can like control objects and stuff. So yeah, I mean, they're not necessarily causing like death. There can be a lot of misfortune. Poverty is a big one, which is something we all fear, right? Like poverty, having things taken away. Um, Sometimes creating situations where there's maybe like, not enough food, or there's no protection from the disease. But by and large, fairies aren't there to cause that. They might point it out, they might magnify it, but typically it's the humans that are the cause. They're the ones responsible, so.
But I mean, revenge is revenge.
Sure, but fairies don't always need to seek revenge in the same way that, you and I need to seek revenge. We'll talk offline about that. But there's definitely like, if you cross them, if you do something really bad, like, you tell them that you're going to never reveal their secrets or the entrance to their kingdom, and then you publish something about where it is, there could be some vengeance. But that vengeance is usually going to take the form of really poor luck, which for most people is like, your family leaving you and poverty. And then you just like a sad old miser with nothing to show for it.
That's my dream. It's my dream right there. I'm not going to lie. All right. So, as we continue on with Varla Ventura here and everything that's going along with that, Varla, what can we do to protect ourselves from these little creatures, beings, whatever you want to call them?
So your best bet is to create some kind of invitation to the ones that you want to attract, such as in your garden, and do that outside of your home, and essentially just kind of like avoid inviting them into your home or across your hearth in any way. If that's something that just like totally freaks you out, or you're worried, you can't do nothing about the Banshee. The only thing you can do if you hear the Banshee scream is get your affairs in order. That's what's so scary about the Banshee. You can't control it. You can't summon it. You can't make it go away. It just is, just like death. So you can, there's all kinds of fairy charms. There's a whole book of fairy charms by Lady Wilde, who, has this kind of incredible list of little things that you can put in bags and sleep, put under your pillow to protect children at night. There's little kind of stick charms that you can make. A lot of people will make use the St. Bridget's cross, which is kind of like this like woven straw cross. It's not exactly a cross. It's kind of more like has 4 points to use in a form of protection. Don't be fooled that the Christian cross is going to be your protector. But if you put that intention in it, that it'll be as effective as a pentagram or whatever kind of symbol you want to use. But don't think that just because you have a Bible that fairies aren't going to come and mess around with you, because they work well with religion.
You sound very sarcastic with that.
What? What do you mean? They work well with religion.
Religion.
I mean, they work around it. They work around it.
Okay. I don't know how, but that just kind of makes me wonder. I mean, should we put offerings out there? Should we acknowledge their presence? And how do we know to acknowledge their presence if we don't even know if they're around?
Well, I mean, if you make offerings, then the odds are that they will come around. And yeah, I mean, acknowledging their presence, I think is wise. And I don't think it has to be something where every day you're sitting in the garden and meditating. If that's not your jam, that's fine. But having some kind of, if you've got like a cruddy garden and bad luck, you can attract them and make offerings to them. Everybody has their own thing, right? It's like some people want to, some people practice witchcraft, some people practice Christianity, some people practice a blend. There's all of these different ways of connecting with the spirit. And I think that connecting with fairies is connecting with the invisible and the divine in many ways. So, I mean, it's a personal preference, right?
Ronald Murphy, the crypto guru, believes that Sasquatch are part of the fairy realm as well. Where do you stand on that?
I am so happy to hear that. I absolutely see that. I think that a lot of the cryptids and magical creatures fall into that fairy realm. Or as I had said earlier, that maybe what we're reading about from 300 years ago, if we, when you compare that to stories that we hear today, there are a lot of kind of overlap. So I could see that. I could certainly see Sasquatch being in the magical fairy domain. It makes a lot more sense, especially because they do seem so particularly elusive. They're always associated with the forest and some kind of natural setting, right? I've never heard of anyone seeing one in the middle of a downtown in a city, but I know many people who have seen them, in particular in Northern California, British Columbia. The Oregon woods are notorious for Sasquatch sightings. So,
well,
I like that. I'm with you, Ronald.
Central British Columbia. There are a few there as well.
Yes.
but so you are convinced that they are a larger part of the fairy, because I mean, to go from a fairy that is a couple inches big to something that is like 9 feet tall and 550 pounds. I mean, that is just a little bit.
No. If you read a description of a puka, they are giants. And giants are in the fairy kingdom, and trolls are in the fairy kingdom. I mean, it's not just little. I mean, they are frequently referred to as the wee folk because many of them are wee, but there are certainly instances of large beasts, such as a 9 foot tall horse. So I don't think it's out of the realm. I don't know if I'm convinced of that, but I think that there could be some pretty compelling arguments. And you could, if you were looking, probably dive back into some of that folklore and see if you can find stories that seem similar to a Bigfoot sighting.
Okay. All right.
I mean,
I'll give you
I've
that.
never done it, but I could see that. I wouldn't rule that out at all.
Okay. Do these cryptid creatures
Would you?
Well,
Or do you think it's its own thing? I mean, do you think that like Sasquatch is its own species, or?
I mean, it doesn't really matter my opinion on it. I think it's its own species. I do. But, hey, if it's got to be representing the fairy realm, I'm okay with that.
So let's just go back to like something that I wanted to touch on, that I touched on in the very beginning when we're talking about the fairy kingdom. And in particular, in the Celtic view, of the fairy kingdom, we are talking about the fairy kingdom essentially being the realm of the dead, the invisible, the unseen, the unusual, the cryptids, all of those things, vampires, werewolves, those all fall in that domain. It's the other realm. So I think that my view of the fairy kingdom is pretty expansive. I think we can get to the nitty-gritty of different types of fairies that are more common and that we see more in literature and that we talk about more. But the greater fairy kingdom in this worldview, which is not my worldview. I mean, I certainly have read this worldview and agree with this worldview, and it makes a lot of sense to me. The idea that there's this kind of other realm, and all of these BCs live in that other realm, and sometimes the gates are open.
Makes sense.
So do you think, okay, so I do, your opinion is important, I think, on this in particular, because and have had more experience with Sasquatch than I have. do you not consider them like magical, or for lack of a better term, or like a higher being? Do you think they're more just sort of like grunty animals?
No, I do believe there is something very special about the Sasquatch. What it is, I'm not quite sure yet. Now, I don't believe that it is a Gigantopithecus. I don't believe that it is something that is a monkey or something. I think that's ignorant. There's too many stories out there, including my own experience that I had, where I saw pixelation. And then when I saw that, a few seconds after we saw that pixelation, we got roared at. I do believe there is something way more serious with this creature than just being a flesh and blood creature. So I do believe that it is its own thing. I'm not sure what it is. And I want before I make an opinion on it, I want to make sure that I know what I'm dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, but just even saying that, the fact that it can change your perception and then create this sort of the audio and then have that kind of pixelation. I mean, that's definitely something you see a lot in the fairy stories. You see the your entire perception is actually changed even for a moment. And that's a way that you know that you're actually entering into, and a sign that you've entered into this other realm. So, I mean, I have never encountered a Sasquatch, so I can't say that definitively, but I absolutely see a lot of the parallels there, and in terms of that kind of umbrella territory of the Fae.
Oh, as you should, and I can see the correlation. My problem is, I maybe it's just size. I think this big, 2 to 3 inches, or maybe 10 to 12 inches, 18 to 2 feet, comparatively to 9 feet, 10 feet,
There are trolls in Scandinavian literature and Scandinavian folklore. There are trolls that are 9 feet tall, and they're actually very ethereal. I'm not saying they're Sasquatch, so they're not known as being hairy or anything like that. But there are actually quite a few. I know we say the little people because we think of Darby O'Gill and we think of leprechauns that are knee high, and a lot of the creatures are, but not all fairy creatures are small. So if that's something that's preventing you, you should try and remove that from your view of fairies, because they aren't all small.
You're making my thinking feel small right now.
I'm just saying that they can be very intimidating and huge. However, having said that, I have not encountered, other than in something more in the werewolf or that kind of realm, I have not encountered a story as of yet that I think really sounds like a Sasquatch from a story from hundreds of years ago in any of the fairy and folk tales that I've read. But again, I haven't read them all. Like I said, I just read that one about the corpse directing the poor teenager to bury it. So there's a million more out there. And if I find one, you're going to be the first to know.
Well, that's good. That's good, because let's go chase out in the forest then.
Yeah.
Why
Sounds
not?
good.
It works for me if it works for you. Varla, we have 2 minutes left. 2 minutes. And I don't know what we're going to talk about in 2 minutes, but you will figure it out. I would love for you to, tell our audience where they could find your books, where they could find more information on you, what dentist you use, all that kind of stuff.
Yes. Okay. So varlaventura.net is my website, and my books are available anywhere books are sold. They're all in print. I have one called Fairies, Pukas, and Changelings. I think someone in the chat asked if it was appropriate for children. And I will tell you, there are stories in there that you certainly could read to children. There's some pretty sweet fairy stories in there, but you would probably want to read it yourself first. There's some scary stuff in there that you wouldn't want to read to like a child under the age of 10. And And then I'm working on a couple new projects. I hope to announce at least one of them soon, but I don't like to announce projects until I've actually gotten them going, because it's backfired on me before. But I am working on a book about fairy and folklore as it relates to plants and magical and medicinal plants. So I'm working on that. And what else? Just you can go to my website and find stuff, or find me on Facebook, or just come back here in a month and say hi again. I mean, come back before then, obviously, because you love Dave, but I'll be back here in a month. Yeah.
Yeah, we would appreciate that love. We would appreciate that love. And of course, Varla Ventura's next visit here will be on September 23rd. Mark that on your calendar, especially you, Varla, because
I better write that down.
That would be kind of helpful. But yes, September 23rd.
I think that
Varla Ventura, varlaventura.net. Varla, we always love it when you are here on the show, and I know our audience loves it as well. You're one of the favorites, and that's why we bring you on once a month, my good friend, to hang on out with us. So
well, thank you, Dave. I appreciate it. It's nice to see you.
varlaventura.net, everybody. Yes, sometimes she goes by her alias, Chad Smith. Yes, she does. She goes by Chad Smith every now and again. Coming up next, Dave 101. Yes, Dave 101. What is Dave going to rant about tonight? You'll find out momentarily. And then we have the SOR News Wire. We have the Thought of the Dave. Stay tuned. Spaced Out Radio continues right after this. Varla Ventura, everybody.
Thank you.
I like giving you a few claps afterwards.
Thanks. Thanks for having me again.
That's how I roll. That's how I roll.
Yeah. All class.
Well, you know, I should have shaved for you, but
oh no,
I didn't make it.
Were you planning on shaving?
Yeah.
Just part of it or all of it?
No, just a trim down.
Yeah, that's.
Oh, look at that. Varla Chad Tura right there. Varla Chad
how did that all, how did that start? I missed the start of that.
What, the Chad Smith thing?
Yeah. What is
okay, so about a month ago, a lot of times we hang out at a show called UFO Garage with Ben and Joe, who are just two of the most phenomenal people I've ever met in this field. And they have this listener named Chad Smith who started coming into our room. Chad's a really good guy, and he really supports the show well. So one day I was just feeling like an idiot, and in my stupid humor that I have, and I go into the UFO group, UFO Garage group, and Chad's in there, and so I just said, "I'm Chad Smith," and he goes, "No, I'm Chad Smith." I'm like, "No, I'm Chad Smith. You can't be Chad Smith. I'm Chad Smith." And it just kind of took off from there. And that's kind of what happened.
Okay. So now it's like
now everybody
claiming.
And now everybody is here's Chad Smith. Every guest.
He's the real Chad Smith. He needs to change his profile to the real Chad Smith.
He got a wrench. So now his wrench says I'm Chad Smith on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I figured there was some kind of inside joke there.
Yeah. So now everybody is Chad Smithing around. Anya or Ann or whoever the hell you pronounce your name, I always forget. And I love you, though. You know that because I know who you are. I know who you are. Thank you for that great super chat. I really do appreciate that. Oh, my goodness. My pen is starting to run out, I think. I don't like it when the pen runs out.
It's tragic.
It shouldn't be. I got lots of ink in here. Oh, it might be because I'm at the end of my notepad.
I don't understand anything you just said. How can your pen affect your notepad?
Because the paper gets thinner because it's always worn out. It's worn out more. The bottom of the notepad is always more worn out than the middle or the top.
I guess I just write really fast so that doesn't happen. I don't know.
Maybe you should pay attention to your notepads more, lady.
All right.
Attractive, right? Varla Ventura,
All kinds of gear.
we'll talk to you soon, okay?
Okay. Thank you so much,
Much
Dave.
love, my beautiful friend.
You too.
Take care.
Bye.
Varla
Good
Ventura,
night.
everybody.
Bye.
Varla Ventura. Varla Ventura. Look at those teeth, everyone. Let's zoom in on those teeth. Hold on. Zoom in on those beautiful teeth. Look at that.
Come on.
Look at that. That is twice a day brushing and flossing, people. This
Sometimes
is what
3
happens.
times.
That's it. You brush 3 times a day?
Sometimes, yeah.
I hope you don't.
I like to brush my teeth.
I
don't
hope you
know.
use a soft toothbrush because you don't.
I do. I use a soft. I use a
Yeah.
Quip.
Good.
Maybe we can get some sponsorship. I use a Quip.
There you go. There you go. Okay, Varla Ventura. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Varla Ventura, everybody. Varla effin' Ventura. All right. We got coming up next, we have the Dave 101. Sonia's News. Now that you're here, because I've been trying to, I don't have your email or anything. So I'm going to put it to a poll publicly here. Sonia's News. We have the Roundtable tomorrow night. I'm offering you a seat at the Roundtable. Do you want to be a part of the Roundtable? Sonia's News. I'm offering you a seat. I need to know, does the audience want Sonia's News in the Roundtable? I do. Lynn is doing great. She's feeling much better. And she'll be back for the weekend. And yeah, she's doing good. She's doing very good. I talked to her today. Sorry, Jenny, I did see your question earlier. Forgot to answer it, so I do apologize. Here we go, everyone. We've rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show, and if you've missed most of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show. It is time once again for Dave 101.
It's time for Dave 101.
All right, Dave 101 is where I kind of go off on a topic every week. We started it last week. This is episode number 2. And tonight I'm getting into experiencers. And I'm going to defend the experiencers a little bit here because as an experiencer myself, there are things that I want to know about what I've experienced. Yet for a number of people out there, we continue to see a lot of really, really angry people that want to put down, cut down, slit the throats of those who have had experience. Oh, this goes way beyond skeptic people. This goes way beyond people being skeptical about what is truly going on in this world. Look, I am skeptical. You're skeptical. A lot of people out there are skeptical about a lot of these outrageous claims that people such as myself, make. And you should be. Of course, you absolutely should be. But there's a difference between skepticism and the anger that we are seeing in the cryptid world, in the paranormal world, and the supernatural world, of course, in the UFO world as well. Look, the people who have had the experiences, I'm not saying they are all innocent. I am not sitting here waving the flag of you got to believe every story that is out there, because we know that there are liars and charlatans in everything that we do in the world. It doesn't matter whether it's, collecting medical, okay, whether it's collecting government paychecks, whether it's ripping off work. There's always somebody who is dastardly trying to beat the system. There is always somebody out there who wants their 15 minutes of fame and will do it by any means necessary. Also, in the UFO world and the cryptid world, we have seen people numerous times who are true experiencers but aren't ready to step away from the limelight and feel that they need to keep going, they need to keep producing these experiences, that they forge the experiences through certain means, whether it's CGI, whether it's planting evidence, whether it's false scratches on someone's back or arm or leg, whatever it may be. We do see a lot of nasty people in these fields. But the majority of those who are experiencing strange phenomena, from gnomes showing up in their garden and knocking on their door, to aliens in the bedroom, to Bigfoot staring out their windows, to Bigfoot staring out their windows, staring into windows, to anything that is in between, these subjects have scared a lot of people. A lot of people. And the people who have had these experiences, no matter whether it's a one-time affair or something that is continuing on, or somebody who has had multiple experiences with multiple different accounts, we have to take their anecdotal evidence and use it towards finding some answers. We can no longer try and slough them away like a broom sweeps dust under a floor mat. Now, there are a lot of people out there in this world who say, we've had enough of the stories. We've had enough of the EVPs on a ghost tour, of shadow people. We have enough with UFO videos and little dots in the sky. We've had enough with these blurry images that people overexpose to try and say, look, that's a Sasquatch or that's a dog man. No, we're done with that. And to their credit, they are right. But there is this faction of people out there, and we see them every now and again in our chat room, okay, who get so angry. Proof! We need proof. Where is the proof? Where's your photos? That's BS. That is garbage. You are lying. Okay? I went on a show a couple weeks ago where somebody posted that my experiences must be due to mental trauma, because I fully admit that I suffer from depression and anxiety. This person didn't believe my stories. They don't have to. They don't have to. But they're always looking for an excuse as to why people are making up these stories. Do you think I really wanted an alien in the forest? Was Samantha Mowat or Carl the Alien Gray showing up at my window? No, not at all. I didn't want any of this. I lived a perfectly happily boring life way before Spaced Out Radio, way before the aliens came, way before the UFOs came, way before Bigfoot and my house became haunted. Had a very happily boring life, and I enjoyed it. Much like people who get thrown into their experiences, they had happy lives too. This is not all a bed of roses. It takes a lot of strength for experiencers to come out and say what they have experienced. Yet for those select few who feel that they need to absolutely shout down, name call, berate, and absolutely carve on social media those who are trying to bring their stories out because they finally built up the bravery to do so. Screw you. You're hurting people for no reason. You are hurting people who are trying to figure out what it was they saw or experienced. Look, you may be all about the science because that's the trendy thing to be these days. It's all about the science and government. What do scientists know? What does the government know? What do we know? We need more science. We need more proof. Enough stories. And I get that a lot of people are frustrated by the stories. But without the stories, you would have nothing to investigate. You would have nowhere new to investigate. We'd see hundreds of thousands of ghost hunters, for instance, running to Waverly Hills, waiting in line, like waiting for a checkout at Walmart, just so they could run through and grab a quick tour with their ghost gear to get some evidence. The people on the internet, whether they are a podcaster, a YouTuber, or just a commenter in a forum or a group on Facebook, can be some of the rudest people out there. And they act like they are the ones who know it all, when nothing in this field has ever been proven. Nobody knows what a Sasquatch is. Nobody knows what a UFO is. Nobody knows what an alien is. Nobody knows what a ghost is or a shadow person. Or, like Varla Ventura said earlier, nobody knows what a gnome is, or a puka, or a changeling, or a sea hag. We do not know. What we do know is there is some crazy, awesome mysteries that are running around our planet that some of us have had the privilege of experiencing. And those experiences have led us to 1,000,001 questions that float through our brains on a daily basis. For those who have had multiple experiences, they are literally right there. And they are trying to figure it out for themselves because they don't probably have a lot of people to answer to. So, like anyone's problem, a lot of us reach out to the internet. And we reach out on social media. Have you had this happen to you? Have you seen this? What do you make of that? But we are so crass and so arrogant and egotistical that many of the people in this field feel they just got to cut people down. I think this is the reason why we do not have a lot of quality evidence coming forward. I bet you that smoking gun Patterson Giblin Phil, aka 2021, not 1967, is out there somewhere. But if I were those people who filmed that film, knowing the rhetoric and the chaos it would cause on social media, there is no way in hell I would ever release it. Look, we want to prove these, but do we really want to prove the existence of these creatures? Do we really want UFO disclosure? No, because it ends an argument for many people. If we find out that Bigfoot is captured, goes into a government jail where he disappears, are we going to believe that? And I mean disappears like vanishes, like a Star Trek type thing. All right, are we going to believe that? No. We don't want the arguments to end. We need this drama. And there are a number of people who feed off of this drama. The drama is causing a lot of heartache, a lot of heartbreak, and a lot of sad people. I've seen it with my own eyes. People who don't want to talk about their experiences anymore because they were in a Facebook group or they were on a YouTube show and they got absolutely trounced because nobody wanted to believe them. It's okay not to believe. What's not okay is tearing someone down because you don't believe them. That's where things get into trouble. That's where the chaos ensues. And that's where the drama begins when it never really had to. So in closing, don't get mad at the experiences, or if you hear someone on this show and you don't believe them for a second, hell, even if you don't believe me, don't get mad. There's no reason to get mad. Okay? There's no reason to call someone a liar, because the last time I checked, for the amount of criticism I've taken for literally having my encounter in the forest with an extraterrestrial with Samantha Mowat, the last time I checked, it was just her and I in there, in that forest with those beings. I didn't see any of the Facebook critics, the Twitter critics, the YouTube critics in that forest with me. Until you've stepped in that person's shoes and seen what they have seen, leave your BS behind, leave your opinion behind. Once again, you don't have to believe, but you don't have to be a jerk about it either. And that's the point. If we want to work together in this field to clean it up, we need a lot of people to stop being jerks. That is your Dave 101 for this week, and we will talk to you next week on the 101. Let's get to the news. The news is always changing, which is why we bring you the SOR Newswire. And Shirky Poo has us set up tonight with some real good stuff. Workers at Hamilton Public Library in Ontario found a copy of The Perennial Philosophy by Aldous Huxley in a return bin 27 years after it was last checked out on December 13th, 1993. Welcome back, Lost One. A post about the discovery of the library's Facebook page reads, a new edition of the book was printed in 2009. Lisa Rada Weaver, the library's director of collections and program development, says she didn't know where the book has been. We do know that our books go on a lot of adventures in our city, our country, and around the world. We hope the book has had a great few decades away from the Hamilton Public Library. That's awesome. All right, for millennia, indigenous cultures in North America have had a close bond with nature. Now, new research has found 3 genetically distinct grizzly bear territories align with maps of where specific First Nations languages are used in coastal British Columbia. Oh, this is cool. In other words, the grizzlies appear to remain in regions populated by certain indigenous groups. The mind-blowing discovery made by an international team of scientists demonstrates just how closely humans and bears are connected, a relationship that members of the Native Association First Nations confirm has existed for centuries. We and the bears have had a lot of the same needs, and it makes sense that we stay fairly close to one area and we have enough resources to feed us. Jennifer Walkus, a scientist, First Nation scientist on the research team. Yeah, it's definitely in line with the fact that most First Nations considers bears to be family. That is something that we are very close to. Awesome. That is a really, really cool story. Moving on, a mother, before I even read this, none of you out there listening ever take my advice to stay the hell out of the ocean. There are things in there that want to eat you as food. Doesn't matter if it's you, your children, your grandchildren, your nieces, your nephews, or your neighbors next door. All right? Stay the hell out of the salt water. A mother accidentally videoed the moment a shark came in too close and almost made contact with her young daughter, who fled the water after seeing the dorsal fin coming towards her in a beach in South Carolina. Yep. Her daughter was almost shark food right in front of her in literally about 5 inches of water. Nicole Oyster and her daughter Sarah, who's just 11, were spending the day in Myrtle Beach. Well, Nicole took video of Sarah playing on her boogie board around the very shallow waters. And of course, as a kid, she's going to fall until that moment happened. Yeah. So what happened? Here comes Mr. Shark swimming through the tiny waves right towards the little girl. The little girl screams, jumps up, must have startled the shark because instead of hanging a right towards her, the shark said, no, I don't want anything to do with you. I'm out of here. All right, and hung a left. Stay out of the ocean, people. You're food in there. Food. Stop being food. A moose charged a runner and left him with a hoof print shaped cut on the back of his head in Colorado. The New Mexico man was out for his daily run on a trail with his 2 dogs when they encountered a big bull moose. Never a good sign. The runner was on the trail in Winter Park, Colorado, a town about an hour and a half from Denver. The dogs were off leash about 50 feet in front of the man during the run. Then suddenly they bolted back towards their owner. Why? Because of the big moose. Moose are dangerous. Yeah. The man took 2 steps forward to see the moose better, and that caused it to charge at him. The moose attacked the runner, giving him a couple of minor injuries, a couple of suplexes. It just happens. That's what moose do in the wild. The man was taken to hospital. He's said to be okay. Very lucky that the only injury is the hoof-shaped print that he has on the back of his head. Could have been way more dangerous than that. Let's get to the thought of the day. Thought of the day happens every night at this time, where we ask a question on our Facebook and Twitter pages, then read your responses on the air. Tonight's thought of the day is, if you could monster hunt anywhere, what would you be hunting and where? Eric, Washington State, Folk, Arkansas, and Vancouver Island in British Columbia, all for Bigfoot, of course. All right, let's get it going. Drew, Dave, I would say the Northwest Territories of the Yukon, maybe northern British Columbia, as well as northern Alaska. Oh, there's a lot of big animals up there. I'm going with you, Drew. Bob, land sharks in BC. Michael, bipedal canine in western Pennsylvania. Paul, north end of Pitt Lake in British Columbia in a couple more weeks from the north end and the hike into the valley that connects Harrison to the lake. Tons of activity in that remote area. Lots of Sasquatch. Good for you, Paul. Call me if you find anything. That is a very, very good area. And let's go, Darren. Any tropical jungle? Chantel, I would monster hunt a truck. Okay. I don't know why. Barry, within the Capitol building of D.C. Oh, that gets political. So thanks, Barry. I don't know why we do that. All right, Joe. No, come on, people. Come on. You know what? That's it for the thought of the day. We'll get a few more here. There's nothing that pisses me off more than when people have to bring idiotic politics into the thought of the day. 3 of my last 5 that I had to skip over, all due to politics. Look, we get out of the politics BS here, guys. Get out of it. It's not funny. You're not being crafty with your words, all right? You're not. And it's not going to get read. Mary Beth, Bigfoot, Pope County, Illinois. Not sure if I would call Bigfoot a monster, though. Let's see. Here's another politics one. No. That's it. We're done. Thank you to everybody participating in the thought of the day and ruining it for the others and the listeners out there, because sometimes that's what we do properly. And, of course, a big thank you to Captain Shirk for the SOR Newswire. Thank you to everybody tuning us in and listening to my new rant, my new vlog, whatever you want to call it, called Dave 101. And I appreciate that. Go easy on the experiencers out there if you don't mind. And, of course, to our guest, once again, Varla Ventura, who comes in here once a month for literally a great show that we call our cryptid world. VarlaVentura.net is her website. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at work, at home, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone tuning us in on YouTube, LGAB, Twitch, Revolution Radio, Spreaker, Facebook, the Space Travelers Club, and on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends, we own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo train has docked for the night. But soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night. You know what I'm going to have to do now? I am literally going to have to go through every thought of the day now, and I'm going to have to literally erase all the political bullshit that's on there. Frustrating. Not for this one, but every night going forward. Just adds to it. Adds to it. Like, I don't know why people think they're being funny and sneaky. Oh, I could make a political joke here. Anyways, not gonna let it bother me. Not gonna let it bother me. Anyways, I am going to go upstairs and quickly grab a drink of water because my mouth is dry. So I'll be right back, guys. You give me a couple seconds here. There you go, Doug Stevenson. Sorry about that. Cool stuff. Cool stuff. Oh, Howard, I understand with what you're saying. Don't get me wrong, I do. Okay, it's not about discouraging, but my big motto is this. And I can't say it enough. We get hammered with politics every single day. Okay, every day. And I want this area to be a respite for those who are hammered with it, to be able to relax. And when I see political comments, I'll give you one here. Hold on. Where is it? Here's one. I'm not going to say who it's from. Within the Capitol building in D.C., these lying, informative animals are the worst monsters on earth. You do not hunt to kill or harm, but to remove and arrest these dystopian creatures before they do more damage to the public than they represent. We don't need that. All right? Or somebody saying Dateline with Chris Hansen, pedophiles. We don't need that crap. All right? And when I'm reading them cold, because I don't pre-read these, I don't want to go into them. All right? And, that just tells me now that I have to pre-read them, and I have to make sure that I don't understand when do we talk pedophilia on this show? We never do. Like, why bring it up? When we're talking cryptids, why bring up pedophilia? Why bring up politicians? Okay? This is what frustrates me. Frustrates me bad. Okay? So, anyways, I'm not trying to be a prick about it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to be a jerk about it. But I also am very protective of the audience and what we want to broadcast out. I don't have a single terrestrial radio station that says to me, oh, by the way, can you get into politics? I mean, we are in a federal election run right now, which the election will be on the 20th here in Canada. You don't hear me yapping about who people should vote for and why they should vote for so-and-so and so on and so forth. And people who don't vote for who do vote for so-and-so are going to be, idiots or whatever you want to call it. Right? So please, I'm not trying to lecture. I'm just trying to get an understanding built here that we're all hammered every day. Dude, I am hammered every day. And when you're a media whore like I am, all right, you are trying to stay on top of things. And there are times when I try and bite my tongue. I bite my tongue a lot. And Overbuilt, how you doing? Where you been hiding? And so, anyways, I'm not trying to shoot down people from speaking. If I apologize if that's the way it came across. It's not what I mean. But I just have to we have to find that happy medium where, it's just not going to happen. Right? So, and when I'm reading them cold, like if I had pre-read them, it's a totally different thing. Totally different thing. Right? So that's all I'm saying. Like I said, I'm not trying to be a jerk about it or anything along those lines. I'm just trying to, comment. So I apologize for my frustration on that. You're right. I should hold my temper a little bit better. You're completely correct in that. And, but sometimes it just gets to you, especially, when you've had a really, really good show and you're happy with the show, you're happy with the performance, and then it just seems to, there are times when you're like, damn it, this is a good show. This is a great show. I'm very happy with this one. And then all of a sudden, there's a comment or something that just tanks it for you. And that's what happens. So I got to learn to control my emotions a little bit more too. You're very right on that. Extremely right. So thank you for the reminder. I do appreciate that. So, yeah, that's all. So please, Howard, please don't think that I'm targeting you or what you said, because you are right. In a very astute way, you are very right. Okay. But I'm just trying to keep the woo, man. River Dogma, how are you? I have to admit, too, that I am really, really starting to enjoy the Dave 101s. It just allows me to get some frustration out. I'm really starting to enjoy them. I know we're only 2 in, but I feel really good with them. Sonia, are you on Twitter or Facebook? If so, can you find me and send me your contact info? Or Instagram? Just DM me. Look, guys, my opinion is not always right, and it's far from being right a lot of the times. And trust me, I would love to, I would love to get into some of the political BS that's happening up here, man. I really would. It makes me just want to scream, absolutely scream. But I can't. I can't. What the hell are you talking about, John Poe? Well, that definitely ain't it. That's it there. And I think our wrenches do a great job to keep that out. But the thought of the Dave happened on my Facebook page. So, usually I catch them, but there was like 4 of them there close together. There's Sonia. Sonia on Twitter. Send it here. All right, buddy. Good. We're going to have you back there, OA. We've missed you. Okay. You can find me, Dave Scott, on Facebook, too. I'm in for that, Sage Necro. You can do. You don't have Twitter? Okay, that's okay then. One of the two. Just find me, damn it. Find me. I'll accept your request. Yeah, I'd put money on Chad Smith too. But if it came down to Chad Smith and R. Keith Andrews, I think R. Keith Andrews would win by the woo. He would totally win by the woo. Instagram, you could go here. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. No, Beehoff. It's always the first one, backyard style. I would love to have a wrestling ring in my backyard. I watch a lot of, if on YouTube every now and again, when I'm in, my wrestling phase, I love watching a lot of that backyard stuff. The wrestling is so horrible. It really is. But those guys are having so much fun. And there's really nothing more that I would love to do than run into that ring and start just pounding people. I think it'd be great. There's one channel that I used to watch. They have like 4 or 5 different championship belts. They cut promos, and the promos are horrible. No, I don't watch AEW. I don't like a lot of the new wrestling. I kind of left after the Attitude Era. Really, pretty much what turned me off of wrestling was Vince McMahon's screw job of Bret Hart. And number 2, when every time Steve Austin would say 4 words, everybody would yell, "What? What? What?" Hated that. Gosh, I hated that. Oh, Joe, you got a bear too. It's a very nice brownie right there. I hated that what crap. I really did. Drove me nuts. Where is the group chat for tomorrow? There it is. I'm going to add John Hudson. And there's that. No, hockey is not boxing in Canada anymore. The way that Tom Rennie, that idiot, has ruined Hockey Canada, where participation badges mean everything, way more important than winning. He's an idiot. Absolute idiot. What do I think of David Icke? I don't. When you are trying to pawn off that the queen is only as old as she is because she is a reptilian who eats virgin children, yeah, you lost me right there. You lost me. Any questions? Put them in capital letters, if you don't mind. Who just messaged me? All right, so who do we have for the roundtable tomorrow night? So far, we have John Hudson, we have Anne Celine, Gary Spikes, Jason Guillemette, and we're waiting to hear on Nicole Sakich. That will be the roundtable, and maybe Sonia if she wants to join us. I'm waiting for Sonia to add me. I should probably put my profile up here. Here you go. One time only. If you haven't added me on Facebook, this is the place. Did I see the bear leave the tree? No, I drove off to Tim Hortons. Hey, Feldon. Gary Spikes Jr. What's the oldest building I've been inside? Probably 150 years old. It's a post house here. Tim Hortons is better than Dunkin' Donuts. All right, B. Hoff, it's my 11th, 30th birthday. Or I'm on my 11th, 30th day ban, and I'll add you 23 days. Okay. Oh, no problem, Nicola. I enjoy it. I love doing this. This is a lot of fun. And chatting with all of you just makes it that much better. All right. Oh, totally. Hockey's terrible. Hockey's terrible. I never thought I would see the day that I'm very much questioning whether I want my son playing hockey. I think it's an absolute disgrace the way that the game is being played now. I would argue it with anybody. If I know anything about anything, I know hockey. And the way I see hockey being played now, it's terrible. It's terrible. And it started when they added the second referee to put 4 officials on the ice. And then the next thing that they did was when they started trying to really clamp down on fighting, and I understand it because of concussions and injuries. There's a lot of money at stake now for every player, whether they're a star or whether they're a bottom feeder. Okay, there's a lot of money at play, and I get that, and I can understand that. But I don't think the rest of the world, it's going to sound egotistical, I don't think the rest of the world has caught up with Canada in playing hockey. I think Canada has and Canadians in general have a real problem with being number one, and we have played down to everybody else. And this is why we don't see as many Canadians getting drafted into the NHL. It's not a popular thing to do anymore, you know. And this is why we see the United States or USA Hockey progressing absolutely beautifully and creating some absolutely fantastic, incredible hockey players, because they are playing the game the way Canada used to play it. Tom Rennie, the guy who runs Hockey Canada, wants all finesse and fun, and a bronze medal is acceptable. Placing fourth is acceptable. No, it's not. No, it's not. And, you know, I even watch, like, in minor hockey, the coaches and everything, where they are all about trying to, you know, get the children to have fun. And, you know, I come from it from a different side. A lot of people will say it's an old school side, but to me, hockey is not fun. Okay. Hockey is hard, and it takes discipline. It takes value. It takes courage. It takes strength, mental ability. And, you know, what's fun is watching a young child take a wrist shot and the puck comes off the ice for the first time, or teaching a kid how to take a proper slap shot, or a kid who is very timid throwing his first body check cleanly and knocking someone down. All right. And it used to be a game of very strong men and very strong women. And the women's game has improved incredibly, especially in Canada and the United States, where the women finally, about 20 some years ago, started getting very, very good, solid coaching and mentorship. And the women, I love watching women's hockey. I mean, those ladies are phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And I can see why they are at the best of their abilities. And kudos to a lot of the universities in both Canada and the United States that have created women's scholarships and women's hockey programs, because there are so many talented women playing hockey now. It's incredible. And but for the men, especially on the Canadian side, we have allowed the world to catch up, and in the case of the United States, I think surpass us in the game. And people will complain the game is too violent. You got to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning for hockey practice, and it's too expensive. It's too this, it's too that. Look, nothing is too expensive if you are investing in a child. All right. I mean, you see people investing in themselves all the time. We don't have money to put a kid in hockey, but we have money to, you know, go to the liquor store twice a week. We have money to go and buy that $30 bottle of vodka, or that, you know, that $20 case of beer. Well, if you add up that, you know, you got money. If you're a smoker, you got money to smoke every day. If you're, you could always make time for it, or the money for it, you know. And like when I just went and spent $400 on brand new hockey gear for my son, and I didn't even faze me. My dad was like, "Holy cow, that's a big bill." And I said, "Dad, what am I going to do? It's an investment in my child, right?" It's like guitar lessons. I pay $145 a month for my son and I to take guitar lessons. What am I supposed to do? Say, no, that's too expensive, right? Guitar lessons over a year cost me more than hockey. And the thing that I would love to see and would love to talk to somebody about is hockey isn't fun. What's fun is gaining the results. And I've coached enough kids, okay, I've coached enough kids over time to know that when you see a kid on the bench after he has scored his first goal ever, that smile on that kid is phenomenal. It is priceless. You want to hug the kid, and just congratulate them and all this kind of stuff. All right. When you see a kid who has had trouble skating backwards, and then all of a sudden one day it just clicks. Okay. That's what it's all about. And the coaches today, for the most part, they have pussified the game so badly that I don't even know if it can recover. I mean, it would take a downright hockey enema to fix Hockey Canada right now and all the hockey associations across our country. Right? So, I mean, that's pretty much it. I'll stop on the hockey rant. But it's disappointing. It really is disappointing. Any other questions here? Have you ever seen the Slap Fight Championships? Yeah, that's pretty brutal. That's pretty brutal. Jenny, Dave, have you heard of 108 Mile Ranch? Yeah, that's where I live, Jenny. It's where I live. I used to run the tour where the haunted stagecoach stop is. That's the post house that I mentioned. That's the oldest building I've ever been in. Felton, am I done for the night? Right now, I'm just editing the show. The official show is over. And so now we're just kind of BSing while I'm sending the show to the radio stations. Give me 2 seconds, everyone. Upload. There we go. Sorry about that. See if I missed any other questions. Mystic Walk, how are you? Brett Lewis is here. Brett Lewis, where the hell have you been? I haven't started a show in months now because you haven't been here. I've been waiting to start the show. Where have you been? Thurston Howell III. Adam, this is a great quote. I know what you mean, Dave, about coaching kids. I was an officer in the forces with the cadet program, and it made me proud to see those kids grow and progress in the program. Absolutely, Adam. What the cadets, and please type it in the chat room. I'll put it in there. It wasn't fun for them. The results were fun. When you got kids to do things that they didn't think was capable in their minds, and all of a sudden you helped them and taught them and rode them a little bit in order to get to where you saw their potential and they made it. That's how you teach people. All right? That's how you get it across to these people. You know, I watch coaches like when my son is out on the ice. My son isn't the best hockey player, but he has fun. Okay, I watch my son out there, watch the coaches. They're only interested in coaching the better kids. That's it. You know, they don't want to coach the weak ones. You have to coach the weak ones. Give them something to aspire to. Don't try and push them away from the game. Right? Joey Hayes, how are you? Well, that's good, Brett Lewis, but we also need you here too. How am I supposed to run a show without Brett Lewis here? That's done. That's done. Share that. What is my vape here? I just opened this pack. It's mixed berries. Mixed berries. Malou! Skip to Malou is back. See, here you go. Adam, 100%. When I staffed in Vernon, I worked with new cadets to find their potential. And it was amazing what these kids could do when they push themselves. Absolutely. And in hockey, we don't do that anymore. This is why if you watched my son at 8 years old on the ice, and then you watched the American program, or you watched the Russian program, or the Swedish program of what they have 8-year-olds doing, it would blow your mind. It would blow your mind what they have kids doing. And it's no more ice time than what you get here. No more ice time. So it is what it is. Not going to change a thing. Not going to change a thing. I can't do anything about it. So, oh well. This one cost me to get this and the 3-pack starter kit. I think it was $30, and then those packs are like $16, and one cartridge here, like that's the cartridge there. It lasts me about 3.5 days. Nicotine vape. I don't do the hippie lettuce. I don't know what dabs are. I do not know. Yeah, John, that was one hell of a mix you put together there on Twitter. That was good. Tomorrow night on the show, we have the Roundtable. Joining me will be Anne Celine, John Hudson, Gary Spikes Jr., Jason Gimet, and maybe Nicole Sakich. And hopefully we'll have a good round table. 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern is when we start. Yeah, it's going to be a fun time. And Science Bob will be back in a couple of weeks. And I want to say a big thank you to Black Dragon, Open Minded Clarity, Jeremy, Apollo, Ann times 2, Big Dog, Andrew, Guest, Smelly Michelle, Ozzy Steve, Sinister, Anya, and Amy for the amazing super chats. Really do appreciate the love and support of everyone here. That helps keeps us going each and every night. We really do appreciate it. We thank all the veterans for coming on in and tuning us in. You will always have a safe home here and a special home here with us. And so thank you for everything that you have done, veterans. We appreciate you so, so much. And all our regulars who are here on a nightly basis in our chat rooms, we appreciate you. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, on Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show, and everything in between. We really appreciate you guys coming here each and every night. Thank you so much for making this so much fun. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. We'll end the week strong before Lynn Wallington is back in the hot seat. Talk to you all tomorrow night.